to open the meeting, call the meeting.
Second.
All right. It is 7:03. Welcome to Appropriation Committee meeting. Tonight is our public hearing, so I just want to give the agenda, what we have tonight. First on the agenda, we have open forum, anyone who wants to make public comment. Second will be our public hearing. We'll open the meeting for public hearing. And then we are going to discuss, we still have some business to do regarding the budget. We'll review the budget and start making some decisions on some of the articles on the warrant. And I believe that, and we can also do some minutes if we, I know we did get a set of minutes from Wayne today. So anyway, we're getting ready to get started. For the open comment, does anyone have anything to talk about? I don't think so. Next item is the public hearing. I move to open to public hearing.
I'll second.
All those in favor of opening?
Aye.
5-0. Okay, so are you here for any public comment on the public hearing tonight? It's Vince, right?
Not yet, not till I hear what's going on.
Okay. So if there was nobody here, we would probably just move on, but if you'd like to hear, we have a presentation, or at least our the Appropriation Committee report that we can go over and discuss the budget, I guess. I know it's on the projector.
So are you going to leave the public meeting open?
Yes, the
continue,
public meeting is
and then
still...
I mean, the public hearing.
The public hearing is open, and this
Okay.
is part of the public hearing.
Okay,
so,
great. Super. Just trying to track.
So I guess, do you want to go over what we have for the budget? Have you seen the budget, or you'd like to see? Okay.
I'm sure the citizens of the town observing the public hearing. Right now.
Okay, so we're making our recommendations. I don't know, do you have control?
I don't have control. I'll throw it out there. It's
Okay, we can go on to the next slide. Basically, we're still working on our report, but essentially, the overall impact is, can you just go on to the next slide?
I mean, it's a scroll.
Who has control?
I have no idea who this is.
I do. It's so this is the report, the draft report.
Okay, so yeah, we're still working on the draft of the report, if you can see it. And we have our recommendations that we're still working on, but generally, if you go on to the next section, our narrative is that this budget is essentially an overall impact of 2.5%, and which is starting at the beginning of the year. We do feel that it is a good budget to hit that number, and that's what the Board of Selectmen really wanted, and they pushed to get down to that number. So essentially, we can go, we'll go on that, if you go on to the next section.
Can I just clarify what you said? The tax impact is going to be 2.5%.
The tax impact, yes.
Estimated tax impact, yeah.
But we go into a little more detail as we're moving on. We do have a couple of concerns that we're still talking about overall, but we're very happy and pleased with the services because of the growth of the town. We increased some of the services, especially in the schools, that have been growing. So that was a challenge. I think at the beginning of the year, it started out at 9.9%, and it was down to almost close to 6.5%. By the time we were able to hit our numbers, 6.6%. And everyone else, we really tightened things up to get it down to this number. If I can, just give me a second here.
Are you looking for a copy of the report? Or
Yeah.
you want to use this? This is printed on Tuesday, I think.
But with an average impact of 2.5%, that'll, for the average taxpayer, for the average house in Hopkinton, that's a $260 increase for a house that might be assessed or valued at $599,500. If you want to talk, you can, you can come up here, yes.
I guess I'm the unelected representative of the taxpayers of the community.
But please, just,
Vaskin Bojajan, 204 Winter Street.
okay.
I guess
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Just a couple of questions. What's the I heard you say 6 or 6.5%, and then I heard you say
That was just the
2.5.
schools. I was just giving an example that, it was a tight budget because we have a lot of growth in town this year. Or, there's new growth, but we're also seeing between Legacy Farms and the other communities that there's an increase in the population, increase in the school population. So this year's budget was a challenge, but we were happy to say that the budget is at 2.5%.
The budget is at 2.5%, so the tax impact is
All right, if you give me
2.5% higher.
If you give me 1 second, I just want to bring up my slides here, that I can give you the numbers.
If you're going to a certain page in the report, you could let us know. Or are you using something else? I don't know if you're...
I was just having a little trouble.
Page, I don't know. Were the numbers on page 8 updated since Tuesday?
Numbers on page 8 is a memo.
I was just looking for the overall,
Second gives you the increase.
the actual overall increase is 7.63%, but when you take into account when you subtract the new growth, we kept it at 2.5%, the actual levy on the taxpayer would be 2.5%. What else, what other factors are there? I'm trying to think of, that got to help it get down to that tax impact.
New growth is funding 54% of the increased costs. So the existing tax base is funding 46% or less, and the new growth is funding 54% of the new tax growth. Those are the two factors. So all the new houses and any new business construction and any new personal property, all that together is paying more than half of the new costs of town operations in this budget.
Which, I mean, people should be aware that that's kind of a bittersweet thing, right? If all that new growth goes away next year, then that means without spending an additional dime in the budget, taxpayers are going to be paying more next year, more than 2.5%.
So I think that's an excellent point. I guess what we don't precisely know yet, because we're not really modeling it, is how much that new growth cost us.
Yeah.
So we know we didn't build any more jail cells, and we hadn't yet added to the police department, but we're adding to police and fire and schools. And so we get new revenue for the new growth, and we have some new costs. We don't know if it's 80% of the new growth revenue or 120% of the new growth revenue. We don't really know that precisely.
But I think the risk is that with the new growth money, we are paying a lot of these bills. So if that money goes away with low growth or no growth, we are still gonna have the burden of the bills that we are now supporting.
Right.
So that means
Set the
there's a
baseline
risk.
higher.
Right, that's not the baseline.
I think, that's a good point. I mean, just funding the pay raises that are negotiated in contracts without any new growth would be a challenge. Energy costs, which sometimes go up, benefit costs would sometimes go up. To stay at the 2.5% and just do those three things would be a challenge. I think that's fair to say.
It's the old structural deficit that we talked about 10, 15 years ago.
I guess, can I revise my earlier statement that I didn't have a public comment early on?
Okay.
Because I spent 11 years on the Appropriation Committee, okay? But it's been a long, long time since I was on it. I know things have changed dramatically over the years. but as a voter and as a taxpayer, I get a little lost in the weeds, okay? And I know everybody's doing a good, I'm not saying everybody's not doing a good job, but as a voter and as a taxpayer, I just don't understand how this community in the last 5 years has increased in value by 33.5%. In 2015, our total assessed value was $2,496,000, and in 2019, it's $3,301,000,000, whatever it is, okay? But the town, the value of the town has grown 33.5%. And with that growth, there are a lot more people that are brought in here to pay the tax bills, okay? And I constantly hear about new growth eating up the 2.5%. And my feeling is, and I've watched this for several years, my feeling is, and might be right, more than likely it's not, Mr. Sestari and Mr. Herr have corrected me a number of times on some of my impressions, but we always seem to start off, we seem to cheer if all we go up is 2.5%. I mean, I don't look at the 2.5% as being the ultimate goal. I look at the taxpayer's best interest as being the ultimate goal. And I'm a little, just forgive me because wasn't prepared to really talk. But I just did, from the top of my head, did a quick, I won't call it analysis, a study of a few pieces of real estate that were added to the town over the last 5 or 6 years, and quickly came up with $100 million in value. From what I found as tax records, came up with $100 million in value. And for that $100 million in value, there was no school, there were no kids. There was no school children, okay? It's 77 West Main Street. I mean, I'm not quite sure what that is. I think that's the nursing home, I think. No.
It's Dynasty.
Is that Dynasty?
Yeah.
It's Freedom Way. Freedom Way just sold. Now, Freedom Way is I guess there are 2-bedroom apartments down there. So I'm sure there is some impact of children at Freedom Way. But that was a development that was built 6 years ago. It was a vacant piece of land that was probably assessed at agricultural value of who knows how low that was. It was developed, turned into a highly successful Moderna, I guess it was called, apartments, and then recently sold, and from tax records, it sold for $65 million, okay? It would, but I suspect there's a minimal impact on kids in the school system. And then there's a couple of minor ones. The Starbucks building, $3.5 million. The Dunkin' Donuts on West Main Street. I mean, that's $1.3 million, basically on 2 vacant lots, right? And I guess as a citizen of the town and as a taxpayer, it baffles me that our taxes go up as much as they do, and albeit it's not monumental, and fortunately for me and some of the people I know, the $200 or $300 or $400 or $500 a year is not going to put me in the poorhouse. But it's the concept. It's the concept, and I personally think that it should not be happening. The actual tax bills in that same 5 years have gone up 9%. The total population growth, and the population growth, and what I was able to find, lags a couple of years behind. I'm not quite sure why that is, but it lags a couple of years behind. The total population growth was 8.5%. I mean, straight line, and of that 8.5%, I don't think that everybody in that 8.5% is a school kid that we have to educate for $15,000 a year. It just baffles me. And to date, I'm not comfortable in the numbers, and I think it's this really is not meant to be disrespectful of anybody that's in this room right now. It's not meant to be disrespectful of the selectmen, and it's certainly not meant to be disrespectful of the people that work for us in the town hall during the day in various, I don't know who's who here, okay? Finance, CFOs and Appropriation Committee guy. But it just, in my mind, the math doesn't work. And I'm troubled by it. And now I'm going to, forgive me, but the only thing I can say next is a political thing, okay? But I'm troubled that we as a community, the management, elected or appointed of this town, I personally believe don't demand of the town and of the day workers or the people that work for us, we don't work for them, a better reckoning, and to keep this budget, and this, not so much the budget, keep our taxes going up. I mean, in my simple world, I had very successful businesses for many, many years, didn't make a gazillion dollars, but had enough, I live okay. But if there's a 33.5% pure increase in the value of the community, okay, and in order to create that value, you create a lot more taxpayers, and I suspect some of those people, even though they're taxpayers, aren't even voters in the town, okay? It just doesn't work in my head. Now, I'm sure that all the numbers that I can see, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and check the math and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure it's all right. I mean, it always has been. Maybe this is the wrong board to be saying that, but on the other hand, I believe, per our charter, right or wrong, that this board has some sort of oversight over the budget. I mean, I'm not quite sure what the role. I know that in the old days, we had a lot of authority.
We hear you, and and I know you've been very active in the town, and I've talked to you in the past.
Yes.
And I don't think anyone at this here disagrees with you, because we've been, those who've been on the board, whether Board of Selectmen, we've been going over this probably for the last 6 or 7 years. But I know you're saying you don't understand why it still goes up, but we've been debating, we know exactly why it goes up, and we have been expressing, our concerns every year at town meeting. Specifically, a lot of the cost drivers that we've just have 3 new buildings that we've just completed building, whether it's the Marathon School, the DPW, and the library, and they all came online at the same time. And I think within the last 3 years, those projects have suddenly come online, meaning we now have debt that we're paying off the debt. And I think we did a presentation back in probably 2013 when we were lining up here the different projects, and we showed this slide at town meeting that showed here's the tax increase that you were going to see. And I think it was an estimate that just from those projects alone, the average cost of the taxpayer was going to be 10%, just from these projects if you did them separately. But because of the new growth, and actually it was between last year. We don't see any impact this year from the new debt, but last year and the previous budget in 2 years, we had to absorb those 3 buildings, which would have been 10% if we did not have any new growth or other factors or other efficiencies in. So when you see and the new growth was a huge part of it that was able to soften the blow, so to speak. And that's why even though last year we were able to hold it at 5%, it could have been much worse, because that's when we had the bulk of all the new debt. So that was the challenging year, was last year. I think it was a 3% increase the year before, 5% last year. But that's increases not just from the impact of the buildings, that's also contractual obligations and just the operational budget in general. So, on our report that we have, I do like to show here's the inflation rate. So what's the what are things going up just in the world around you, if there was no other factor that in terms of contracts, paying employees, or the cost of fuel and everything else, that's gonna be the impact. And years before we had the new projects, we were actually below the inflation rate. The last couple of years, we've been above. This year, we're a little bit above, but, last year was a big hit. Inflation was a little bit less than 3%. Our impact was 5%, but that was the big hit, and we were able to hold it. It could have been worse. So we all hear you, and every year we are still saying, boy, it was really the projects, and the capital expenses that we were hit with. And now we're starting to see the new growth. I know you say, well, the population has an 8% growth, but I think the schools are having an even bigger growth. Maybe it's the robustness in the real estate market. We're always talking about that. It's not just legacy farms and the new buildings, but it's just a lot of turnover in the neighborhoods. Maybe the times are good and people are deciding to either move out of town or go to a smaller home, or they're making changes there. So who's moving in? New families with new kids going to the schools, because the schools in this town have a very good reputation. They're top rated in the state. So it's becoming like a magnet, and which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's great to have good schools. So that's part of the growth, and that's why you always are hearing, if you listen to the school committee reports or when they're going to the Board of Selectmen, why the school growth has been, unprecedented in the last couple of years. I don't know what the population is going from, but it's been a pretty large increase. I don't know if anyone else wants to add.
Actually, in some of the stuff that I've been putting together for the last couple of days, I've been going on cleargov.com quite a bit, and the school part of that, I'd have to say from my perspective, is lacking in that the one piece of data that I was not able to get was the actual growth in the school population over the last 5 years. The town's part of that cleargov.com website, whatever it is pretty good. I mean, I found there's a tremendous amount of information on there. But I think a lot of what and I hear everything you're saying, and I agree in most part, but I think if the growth and the total value of the community was going up at the same rate as the population was, at the 2, 3, 4, 5% or 8.5% over 4 or 5 years. That, I think, in my mind, I could probably see that math working, but that is not what's happening. The value of the town has gone up exponentially. It's gone up 33, well, according to I don't know who sent these numbers. I got these from
No, it's a big
today,
rise, yeah.
Town, through John Catino. I mean, it's 33.5%. That's staggering.
Yeah,
staggering.
That metric doesn't entirely transfer over
sure.
though to tax rates either, because, as it was mentioned about, the strong school system, and of course, we do have the new development, but that strong school system has really helped the property values that were already existing. So even if we didn't have the new development, there's the pie, and the pie may get bigger, but each person's proportion of that pie is the same. So
No, it's not, because there are more people to pay for the pie.
well, there are now. There
are more
but-
people.
But all
If we had the
that
same- I'm
33%, that 33% growth isn't entirely due to new.
Oh, no, of course not.
to,
Of course not.
new development.
So,
If I can clarify a little bit.
That's what I was saying. I didn't mean that. I'm sorry.
Even though the value has gone up, all the values have gone up. You have new growth, and then you have all the values. You can't suddenly, people aren't getting taxed more if the whole town goes up 10% in value in 1 year in terms of valuations. We can only raise taxes, Prop 2.5 can only go up 2.5%. And nobody, if your values have gone up 10%, people are not going to see a 10% increase in their taxes. That's not how it works. So
I know that.
it's real. Yeah, so I just want to make it clear if anyone's listening, and that's.
And then the fact of the matter is that, in some of these new developments, the number of school children who are coming into town is greater than what was anticipated. And that's great commentary on the school system. We do have great schools. There were things built into some of the host community agreements, which help out a bit, but again, those are one-time issues too. So, you know, it's something we have to deal with now.
Can I just point out too, the school budget is, it's about half of the budget these days, a little more than half, but the increases are also in public safety because we have more people. The roads need to be maintained, so a lot of the DPW's increases because of pavement, maintenance. So a lot of things, just the growth is driving.
Yeah,
so,
and I clearly understand the incremental growth in a lot of this stuff. It's just what catches me off guard is I'm looking at everything, most of the curves I'm looking at are like this, and the value of the town is like this, and it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's not, I mean, if we increase the town, whatever to 5,000 people in the last several years, all 5,000 of them were not kids that we have to educate.
So our ratio of what we're spending to the value of the town is getting better then,
Has to.
right?
That's 33 and a half. Yeah,
So what are you complaining about?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I think you made a lot of good comments and good points, and thank you for the data. But I think also to look at the data is that how the increase in taxes has been compared to the valuation growth. I think you'll see that, as Mike was pointing out, it's not exactly the same rate, of course, by all means. But we do care and understand that, the taxes going up while we are in the one of the best economic cycle is concerning. And the other thing, so coming back to that, one thing I want to point out before I make the other statement is if you look at ClearGov for school costs, you'll see that per child cost in Hopkinton is, I think, $14,593 something, and which is a median across the towns in New England. So to Todd's point, I think the spend we have increased on school and the other services that Rebecca was mentioning has been tickling because of the growth that we are seeing, because the growth has been quite a bit over the last few years, and last year alone I think we have seen more than 100 new students, and we are projecting more than 100 every year coming up. So all these kind of adds to the pressure on the services. And you'll also see, if you followed the hearings, that every service owner or leaders do feel that pressure, and in many ways we also see that how do we manage it going forward is going to be also challenging, because we are not seeing enough capital investment for us to be prepared for the growth that we are seeing if it goes at this pace. So for example, if the school continues to see this many students every year, we may have to look at new schools or even revamping our existing one, which will incur more cost. So we all discussed about this in many forms, and one thing I think we all agree is that we do need a larger scale strategic plan for the town where we can tie these numbers together for the present as well as going forward, how it's going to look like. We seem to, and for good reasons, address a lot of the urgent needs and address a lot of immediate investments, but we often don't have that full view of the future together. So comprehensive, I think, planning, analysis, and then kind of strategic planning for the all the services, combining with the growth and managing the growth, I think would be key. And certainly looking at the taxes, we want to make sure that we have the fiscal oversight on all the services, as you'll see through hearings and through our commentaries. But it is a growth and a lot of the pent-up demand that we haven't done for a long time added to all of these equation.
Well, I guess one of the things, I understand the growth, and I can do the math. I mean, given time to look at all the paper, I can do the math. I clearly understand. It is growth, but it's also, but in my mind, it's also our willingness to I guess I don't know what the terminology is, not at least philosophically talk about zero-based budgeting or something like that. In other words, we always address our budget We have done it, I've been here 40-something years, 42 years. We've always addressed our budget as, here's what we did last year, okay? How much more are we gonna do this year? And then the first pass is 10%, and the selectmen jump up and down, and 10% goes down to 6 or 7 or 8%. And then the Appropriation Committee beats on them a little bit more, and it's down to 4 or 5 or 6%. I understand that, but I just think we haven't, to date, we haven't as a community, at least come to the point of really grabbing the bull by the horns and managing the zero-based budgeting, is the lack of better terms, concept, and just we keep adding on to what we already have, okay? I mean, and I come into town hall once in a while. I used to come in a lot more than I do now. We have an incredibly good workforce here. We have incredibly good people. There isn't a person in this town hall that I would say is not working hard and doesn't do a very good job, on the one hand. But on the other hand, I never hear, and we've got title after title after title, and assistant this and all that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, I never hear us taking the position of, do we really need them all? In other words, if somebody can be doing an excellent job at his job or her job, okay, and will continue to do it forever, okay, but no one's ever taken a look at, does that job, do we really still need that job in this town? Or do we need it? And I don't think that's I don't think it's the role of the Appropriation Committee.
Yeah, but I would argue.
I don't think they're doing that.
Yeah, I would argue against that point also. You know, I was on the Board of Selectmen for 9 years, and for the first 4, maybe 5 years, we had a hiring freeze. Anytime there was a new opening, whether it was through attrition or the town manager asking for a new hire, it had to come through on an individual basis with the Board of Selectmen so that we could review it. In my first, I think it was 7 years on the board, overall town hall, I'm not looking for things.
I know you're not.
But, you know, I think overall, the town side of the government, head count increased, I think it was by 4 people, you know, something really small like that. Which, as the town was growing, and that was a big growth period, not as quick as it is right now, you know, I think that was, I'd say reasonable, but beyond reasonable, you know, for what we were offering. And so we've been through various phases, and I'm tight with my pennies. And I don't like to see taxes go up. And, you know, you can talk to Tim and Dave and Ben, and, you know, from our conversations, I'm always wondering, you know, why do we have this in the budget? You know, is that necessary? You know, can't we represent things a little bit differently, you know, just to kind of bring more transparency to taxpayers so that they're making informed decisions. But, you know, in the years that I've been involved in the budget, first of all, I will say that as much as I want to get taxes even lower, the budgets that we've passed, I almost feel guilty because I feel things, you know, whether it's departments or facilities, are getting cheated. And in the first few years that I was on, it was right after the '08 crash. Everybody knew that, you know, times were going to be tough for people. And so we really, you know, pinched the pennies hard. And we saw maintenance on buildings start to suffer. And, you know, since then, you know, we've had a number of times where, you know, we start looking at things and we say, all right, you know, is this what we want to do again? Or do we want to make sure that we're, you know, putting this money into facilities? Or, you know, maybe it's roads, maybe it's a building, you know, and maybe it's services. And, you know, we can't, in times like this when the economy is strong, it's difficult with good conscience to start ignoring some things like that. And then it's compounded when we have the incredible growth that we've had in town, both in population and, you know, just the programs that are required to serve that population. So I totally understand, you know, when you look at numbers like this, it's easy to look and get frustrated. And, you know, but it's somewhat the cost of doing business, you know, and if you want to be in a town where the values are, you know, staying high, while a lot of other communities, the values are not going up, you know, they're going down. You know, sometimes, you know, these costs are necessary. And I can assure you that at least I'm looking at things with what I think is a keen eye and trying to keep things down and reasonable. I know that the different board members that I've had the pleasure to work with, you know, both on this board and the Board of Selectmen, I feel pretty safe in saying that every one of them, you know, had the same attitude. And, you know, it's just, when you have this growth, it's difficult to keep everything down. It's the bottom line.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm done for now.
Are you done for now?
Maybe forever. Oh, no, so I said that, I guess I said that, and then at the other hand, tongue in cheek, I think about it, you know, I think the fact that the room that we're in right now is empty. We have one citizen here. I mean, Grant, you're all citizens. Many of you, if not all of you, live in town and pay taxes in town. So, I mean, it is indicative that, in general, I have to believe that the people outside there that write the checks, if they're not, if they by their silence, they're certainly putting their stamp of approval on everything or most of what we're saying. And if they're not, wait a minute, if they're not doing that, and they're silent, too bad. I feel bad for them.
And
Because they speak up to me, they complain to me from time to time, because they know in the past I've gotten up and spoken, and I've said things like that. And I look at them and say, you guys can do the same thing, and it will change. If you want something to change, when I'm at one of those meetings, and I'm sitting there, and I turn around and look, and there isn't a damn one of you behind me, I said, you're not going to see any change. You're only going to see change if you show up.
Yeah, and you're at, you know, annual town meeting every year, and you see that, you know, most often when there are these articles that are coming up to spend more money, there are a lot of people in there that make sure they come to make sure that the town is spending money on this project, that piece of land, or that building. So, you know, this ends up being the result too.
Yeah,
And the
and on that
budget-
note, we have been
The budget is passed unanimously, or...
I know.
Which is quite forceful.
Well, that's why, and again, from the past, and I'm sure it continues to happen, my comments to a lot of people was many, many years ago, was that being on the Appropriation Committee, I had the opportunity to vote twice on everything. And the first vote was when the budget, and back then the budget process was different. People came directly to the Appropriation Committee, and we worked it. We had 9 members. We worked, but I mean, we worked it and worked it and worked it, and we worked it out. And then we went to town meeting, and we got to vote on it. We got to vote on it a second time.
Right.
So.
And you probably know that from appropriation side, we do the due diligence, but we don't make the policies. And we try to make things aware so citizens can take their decisions. So you'll see in the last few, as Rebecca was mentioning, we have presented many of the impact of the decisions, capital decisions, how it's going to impact the taxes, how it's going to impact the overall. And, you know, our intent is to make everyone take an educated decision and the educated vote. And that's how I think it is also part of the citizens that you were mentioning, to take more part in this process and engage and understand and then open up. So thank you for coming forward. Certainly it's a...
How often have you seen these articles come out and they pass, but when they start doing the hand count and having people stand up, you see most of the people on stage disagreeing with the people in the audience.
And something I learned in high school, which was unfortunately many, many years ago, was about our democratic republic, that we have and the supposed rule of the majority. Well, as it turns out, and Hopkinton is a prime example of that, the town is really ruled by a very small minority, and we all hope that they have the majority in mind when they're voting at town meeting, because there's usually 150 or 200 people in town meeting in a town that has 16,500 people. And that sounds to me like we're being ruled by the minority. Thank God that in most cases they have the rest of us in mind when they're doing it.
And the majority support them through inaction.
Yeah, right. Yes.
There's no other way to say it. I think engagement is a challenge, but.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I love having my own private public hearing. This is, I hope I don't get too used to this. Is there any room for
This is
selectmen
better
candidates?
television than our last
Huh?
meeting, this is
What?
better television than our last meeting when we would have
Oh,
5 minutes of
that's okay.
silence.
I keep forgetting from TV.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you very much.
But you're
Thank you very
absolutely
much.
correct. When the
Thank you.
budget everyone seems satisfied with the budget, we'll be very quiet at the Appropriation Committee public hearings. So I think you're the first person to show up in 2 years.
A lot of good questions, thank you for that.
Yes,
And
thank you.
stirring up thoughts, certainly.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want us to go through, I mean,
I don't know
we
what you do now.
weren't really prepared to
Don't
go
get
through
mad if
the
I
whole
leave,
budget.
okay?
We're always open for questions, because when we close the meeting, we'll go off and continue with our business.
Yeah, I
So-
wasn't, but with the amount of work that I know goes in preparing the budget, and from the town manager to all the departments and all that, and by the time it gets to you guys, and you've looked at it 2 or 3 times, there's no need to nickel and dime or question any of that stuff. Philosophically, I wanted to hear it, and I'm hearing it. Thank you.
Thank you. So can we close the public hearing at this
Oh,
point?
God, I was the full public hearing.
We need a motion.
Thank you.
I move to close the public hearing.
I will second.
All those in favor of closing public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. So now we're off to the next piece on our agenda, which is, as I was told today, that, I guess 10 days before town
14
meeting-
days.
14 days?
Before the public, before the town meeting is the Appropriations Committee report deadline. So we've been talking, when we scheduled the series of 7 meetings, we talked about finishing the report to submit it in a timely manner, so it can be submitted in a timely manner. Now, I don't think there's penalties for not meeting the deadline, but I'm sense that you would want to meet the deadline.
So our deadline is
Town
Monday.
charter.
It's when?
Monday.
Monday?
So we have scheduled another meeting in case you want to meet Monday to approve the appropriations report. But there's also the opportunity to review, edit, and approve the appropriations report tonight. So it's really how you want to attack it. And the 2 things we really want to do tonight is either approve or make progress on the final draft of the appropriations report, and we want to go through some of the warrant articles, which are now numbered, and you can get some voting done on some of those articles. So I think in either order, do you have a sense of a preference on the order? Does it matter?
No, it's certainly up to the committee to start to take positions on either item.
Can I back up one thing? You said there's a meeting scheduled on Monday?
In case you need it, because
It's
we,
not, just so you know, it's not posted on the calendar, the town calendar. I just checked and I don't know about it, so,
okay, well, Ben posted it this afternoon.
okay,
And it was
okay.
posted with the town clerk, and it was posted.
Okay.
So
just
then
hasn't
it has to
shown up
get-
on-
yeah, so it's in the
okay,
book.
So as long as it's
It's
posted.
in the book and it's stamped, and it'll be on the
Friday
town
is not
calendar.
a
Not a,
Holiday.
it's not a holiday, no, it's not. Only on Wall Street.
Yes.
It's one of the 2 days a year they close.
Okay. So I do think we should do another go over the report. Great. Just to make, I think that would just be a good idea, just, we can spend all night on just the warrant articles, and then we'll definitely be here Monday.
Right. So I've shared that, there's an electronic copy of that report, the draft report, I think everybody has it. And it's, Mike's machine will be up on the screen. I
Does
think
it-
that's Mike's machine, or Ben's.
Yep.
Ben's machine is on the screen.
So is this the one dated?
I just shared it
4/10?
with you, yeah, again,
Oh,
because
did
I
you
saw
share
you
it?
didn't,
Did you share? Oh, there we go.
I just shared it with you. And do you, Todd, I know you're on it because you've been commenting.
Yep.
Does everybody have it up?
We're still working out that same copy.
Right, yeah, that's the beauty of Google Docs, and actually it's perfect for this venue, because you can look at, we can talk and change words live in front of all of us here. So it's like, what was that tool we had that, back in the 90s, collaboration tools, so it's like that.
Is this information that's in here on the police department and fire department calls, is that new, or? did I
Can you
just
tell me
miss it?
what page you're on?
27,
27,
26, 27.
I'm getting there.
I believe that was the presentations that they both made
So,
at the
yeah.
public.
So we had the narrative in an earlier draft, and the town manager thought that the narrative that had evolved looked like it was written by a lot of different people. There were different structures, there was different emphasis, there were different sequence, and his direction was to come up with something that had a common look and feel and a common level of detail. So we have gone through all that narrative and tried to normalize it to each other. And so the content is the same or similar. And what you see there in the yellow highlights throughout that section, starting on page, I think, 20, starting on page 26, those are performance metrics. And you know, it's been one of our objectives to try to present performance information together with financial information to describe the value proposition of the town. So again, this is your report. So those are proposed performance metrics, and if you wanted to pass it tonight, and you like those performance metrics, we would then populate them. And if the committee decides you don't want performance metrics in there, we will probably produce something like a popular report that's a much condensed version of this after the town meeting, and we will use those performance metrics in a different way. It's what people call a PAFR, and they're getting more, I think I shared examples of PAFRs with you. So to try to get a sense of some of the performance and value issues, those are recommendations. And if you like them, we'll populate them with the data and maybe modify a few of them if the data is not available. If you think it's not right for this product, we will take them out because it's your report.
Which page is it on? I
27.
don't see it on 26.
If you start on 20,
25, bottom.
you know, I'm looking at the actual pagination, and the numbers are different. So the numbered page 25 and 26.
The one that says percentage change, is that?
I think you may be in a different.
Oh, different version.
Let me share it with you again, I'll
Can you
just,
share it with Mike as well?
I will. I'll do it again.
Can
But
somebody,
which email address, Mike, do you want me to
Yeah,
use to
sure.
share it with you? Okay, I don't know if I have that. Let's see.
Actually, my email too. I think I don't have it.
this is embarrassing. Can somebody grant me access?
Yeah, I'm delighted
Well,
to.
no, what happened is my daughter did something on my PC and it's coming up with her email address and I can't.
That's okay, I think I know that address. Was that the, what's her first name?
Allison is a lazy
Allison,
potato.
yeah,
That is her
she's in
email
my
address.
global.
12 years old.
My wife is gonna say, who is Allison as a lazy potato? Why is she in
I
here?"
apologize.
No, it's okay. And Mike, but I only have I don't have a Gmail address for you, Mike, other than, so is it chair?
Begs the need
app
for us
chair.
to have our own email address.
You gotta give me more actual
App
APP?
App
App chair, got it.
at hopkintonma.gov.
Okay. Okay, you're sharing with people outside the suite. Yeah, this is a little awkward getting it going.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This is a little awkward getting it going, but I think once we're all on this same
We can read
actual,
that too, if you want to scroll to that.
Correct, yes, sir.
once we're on the same file.
So
Can I-
this is the piece that,
Just point out that we probably should only be doing this while we're all together, because do we run into issues with open meeting law if we're sequentially modifying this? I don't know,
Well, we can only do it during this meeting.
during this meeting, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Great. So that, you'll see those sections in yellow right there.
Oh, yeah.
And those are sample performance metrics, the kind of things that talk about value, like the number of municipal employees per capita. So that's the kind of thing we can start benchmarking with other towns. How many employees do other towns of 18,000 have? You know,
Right. No, I love these metrics. One thing quickly I wanted to also add, do we have access to cleargov.com?
Yes, everyone does.
Like the appropriation members, or?
Every citizen.
Yeah, it's a publicly available open website.
No, it is, but then I wanted to drill down to some of the data, and they told me that it's only access to the town administration, and asked me to contact you or Josh.
Okay, well, we would absolutely, anybody, give anybody any of the data that populates any of the tables. I mean, I don't know if there's some point where some of the data is editable, and that's why they do it. I don't know why, but everything is available. So we
That'd be
can give you
great.
anything you need.
I'll remind you, but that'll be helpful, because I think the clear metrics comes out in public, but when I wanted to look at some of the one layer down data, that's where I think we need that access.
So in the previous narrative, for example, the library included a large number of metrics in a narrative form. DPW put some lists of metrics. The fire department had tables. Everybody was presenting metrics in a different place, in a different way. And this is really an attempt to get the section that talks about, for every department, what they do, how you measure their effectiveness, and then what the significant budget impacts is. So it drives everybody that same kind of a look. And
So I'd just like to make a comment more directly to the content here that's in yellow that could be filled out or
Great.
whatever. I think a lot of it that just doesn't belong in the appropriations report.
Okay.
Subscribers and followers on social media, number of citizens on boards and committees. I don't know, as far as the Appropriations Committee is concerned, I think some of this is interesting, could be interesting to people, but I don't think it has anything to do with us. I think there can be an argument made for some of the things when we start drilling down into, police department and fire department, as you were mentioning, kind of getting an idea of the metrics and what people are getting for their money. But I think that even that, in some of the context that you were putting in, it only has value if we see, what are other communities doing, and what are they like? And we don't have that information, nor do I think we should necessarily be putting all of that in there. Some of the stuff in here I think is good, some of the bond rating and, the rates of return and things like that. That's fiscal, and I think that's more pertinent to us. But I think a lot of the other stuff can probably be dropped.
And there's
That's
the
just
annual report
No,
that I
that's a
feel is more
Good
appropriate.
point. But I was thinking, this is probably the only, or I haven't seen enough probably, that could be two, where you can see kind of the state of the town.
Well, I think that's more appropriate for the town
Second.
report.
Yeah, the annual
Yeah,
report, I think this would be great.
well, if that's the feeling of the committee, we are much closer to an excellent finished product. So that's,
To fill all this stuff in now.
yeah. Well, we're gonna do it because we want to present, the town wants to present this perspective to the taxpayers.
Yeah.
And we will do it in a different forum,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yep.
And I think that it should be under consideration next year for the annual town report. That's all bound, but I know it's much too late for that now.
So I just want to run back to something you said, Rebecca, is for the open meeting law, you can make comments to the finance team or questions, but you can't have anything that could constitute a debate. So you could review the report, give us comments or questions that we can respond to, but it can't be as a group.
My
So I just
concern
wanted
is
to
on
make
a
that
Google Doc
clarification.
where you can see comments, so if we all go home and start, the five of us start making comments, everyone can see those, so that's not just going to you guys.
It's an
That's my
excellent point.
concern.
We
Yeah.
hadn't had two members simultaneously on and commenting on each other's, so we did not run afoul of that.
Yeah,
but
oh,
you're
no,
right.
I don't think we have
could
that,
have,
no,
we
but
could
I
have,
think
so
we
it's
as a
great that you
committee
pointed that out.
Should agree to not put any more comments.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So if the group wants to take the yellow performance stuff out, we will do that, and then that really streamlines the rest of the report. If you may want to focus on the message at the beginning, or there may be numbers you want to validate, but you may be in a position to vote for this report tonight if we're going to do that.
I'm sorry, I do want to kind of review those, I don't have it in front of me. I looked at it and I agree, there are some that comes out as, that can be moved to somewhere else, like the annual report, but I'll probably need a little time to process the rest. I like some of the ones that are related to the town growth or financials directly or indirectly. So can I have some time to review that?
So,
Need on Monday to finalize?
Oh. That's a good point. So while we are thinking on that, another point I wanted to kind of check out, Tim, is there are few graphs that showing the debt.
yes,
Debt picture tapering down.
yes.
Now, I thought about it, and I like the charts, but what I'm thinking is, what is the message we are giving? And is this the accurate message that we want the town to think that way? So looking at this, the message seems to be, we are doing great because the debt is going to go down continuously, and in 5 years you'll be almost zero debt, or zero, debt exclusion interest payment.
Right.
But is that realistic, and do we want to send that message?
So I thank you for asking that question. I think the representation is realistic because we made the change that Todd suggested that really none of us had the history on. So it was my perception that the normal debt level and the general fund, and I'm now looking at page 19, which is really the money chart, all the money's there. So my perception was that normal was 8 million, and that we were gonna tail down to 4, and then we'd be looking at recapitalization. And when we went back, as we were asked to, it showed that normal might be 5, might be 6, might be 4, and that we have a long debt stream. And really, those 3 lines would show you, the first one is the debt that exists, the middle one that's lighter, that's above it, shows you what the town has already committed to at previous town meetings, but has not incurred the debt for. And then that dotted line above it is the fire truck and the sidewalks and the other few things we're gonna do, what we're asking people to commit to now. So this is really a valuable, probably the most valuable new thing in the tool, now that we've extended it backward and showed what something like normal is. I think the other ones later, it's accurate. Some of those debts go away in a few years, and I think that's worth knowing. But it's less money, but we want it to be consistent in the presentation of the data if we were going to do it for the big pot of money.
What did it come out? I know you said something at the very beginning. What did it come out as far as what the standard is?
So there's, we didn't find a standard, and we were gonna draw a dotted line there for what the norm or the standard was, and we couldn't find a authoritative standard, and we didn't wanna cook it, like a percentage standard.
So I think if you talk to the town manager, over the last few years, the Board of Selectmen has talked about what we wanted to target for that, and he may have record of that.
Okay, we'll ask him. We'll ask him about that.
So, go ahead.
Also, based on this chart, as it's a theme we've talked about over and over, is that with the high school coming off, that we also have the MSBA to counter
Yes.
the debt.
Yes.
So you can see look at the drop between fiscal year 21 and 22. That's like, you see the slope is
Right.
pretty big, and that's the high school itself, but we're not taking into account the MSBA
Right.
contribution.
So we haven't cracked the nut on how to represent that, maybe a representation net of that subsidy, and it would lower the whole line. It would change the shape and lower that line a little bit. We haven't done that.
Where does Marathon School fall into this?
I would have to say it's that peak at 19.
We'll see the difference between, fiscal year 16 to 19.
Yeah. Is that the big three?
That's the three projects. That's what I was talking about. That was the hit, that suddenly our debt service went from 5 million to 9 million in like 3 years in terms of debt service. And that's where the new growth really eased the pain quite a bit to the taxpayer.
So one thing, and I know I've mentioned it before we saw this report, I mentioned it in the middle of the report, and I'm gonna mention it again, see if maybe I can get what I want at some point. Whether it's in this report or whether it's in presentation that Mike does before town meeting, I would still like to see it's probably a set of maybe 2 to 3 graphics, but something that represents the property values and, 3 to 4 groupings of property values.
We did that today. We did exactly what you asked for, and we did a magnificent, we did a great job of putting it out.
Fantastic.
And what it was the most boring, uninformative chart.
Yeah.
So the idea was excellent, and I think maybe Ben can share it with everybody or bring it up. All it showed was three parallel lines with very low slopes that you couldn't visibly discern
Yeah.
anything from.
Yeah.
So what it showed you was for a $300,000 house, a $600,000, and a $900,000 house, how the value and tax rate rose. And they basically looked, 3 lines that looked like that.
Pretty
And
parallel.
there was no jumps, there was no spikes, they were very parallel.
Yeah.
It looked like the Adidas,
Well, that tells a story too.
But that was maybe used the wrong chart. Used a line chart, but maybe if it was just a bar graph, you can show how the value that you show.
Oh, the actual amounts.
You show, here's the increase in it, here's the increase in values, and.
yeah, they were all the same. What it's gonna show is parallel. You could do it numerically, you could do it with stacked bars, you can do it with lines. But you're welcome to take a look at it. Ben will share it with everybody.
I'd love to, and I'm
In
not
fact, Ben,
questioning,
share with everybody right now if you can bring it up.
Yeah, just bear with me one second.
I'm not questioning what you're saying, but I'd
Yeah.
love to see the actual numbers
You-
behind it, because
yes.
when it comes to this stuff, even if one is, 1/4% or 0.5% more than another grouping,
Right.
that's significant, because, here it is, we're talking about 2.5% increase versus 2.66%
Right.
increase. And, oh no, we gotta get it down to 2.5. Well, so now you're looking at some people that, yeah, maybe if they're in this one bracket and all of a sudden they see.
So that would almost be a compelling argument if it wasn't the fact that each of these is a point estimate and there's variation among the pool of $300,000 houses. So even from there, this whole thing becomes a cone of data.
And that's why in my mind, I was thinking you take that sub-pooling and you get an average out of that of.
Right, but then when you average it, this is what you get. Can you
Yeah,
scroll
so
it, Ben?
it's show up here, so, oops.
Can you scroll so the chart shows? Scroll, there you go, down. That's what the chart looks like.
Oh, see?
So, and this is where I think your point is really well taken, that we're trying to aggregate the data more, and that there's gonna be a particular house that's gonna change more drastically in value when you aggregate it. I think it's more challenging to extrapolate it over the rest of the population, because you can see here that, if we took, and this came from the assessors, that if you took a $300,000 home and a $600,000 home in 2015, they both increased about 6%. You can see it's a
And
It's a
what you
similar
get is,
line.
we had like 4 layers of regression to the mean here. So what we got was lines that were parallel. And the disparity that you were interested in analyzing disappeared through the aggregation as we regressed to the mean in each of the components. And I thought it was possible that either the more expensive houses or the least expensive houses would have a different experience with value growth.
Yeah.
But, and individual houses certainly do, but when you aggregate them all, it was pretty, it's pretty, so we had meant to bring that up and show it to you. It was good, we looked at it and it was good. We thought we'd get something striking, and it was, like a layer cake.
And nobody can, feel cheated in any way,
Yeah,
whether
and
justified or not.
And that is actually a value to that slide, I think. Right. But do we have any, and maybe it's in there, I just missed it, what is the average value of a house in Hopkinton done over this period?
So,
Because I wonder how many, so of those three or four groupings, where are we seeing more houses come in? Like, where's the growth in town, the new houses?
that's data we have to.
So I have a data table that I stratified after one of our first meetings, and Todd raised it, and I looked at how many houses were in each $100,000 band.
Yeah.
And then I looked at what the assessment growth was for a year, looking to see if there was an exorbitant growth in one or the other. And there was a hair of variation around this $800,000 houses, which seems to be kind of the sweet spot right now. It's just, for a number of reasons, I think the value point maybe. It sounds absurd to say that's a value point, but that really is the value point, where you get quite a bit more house for not much more money, and then it tails off after that. So there was a little spike there, but otherwise it was pretty, and on the very low end, because the floor tends to rise, right? So there just aren't any more $200,000 houses.
Right.
So that bottom end comes up.
I'm not saying that's a slide for the meeting, I just think as you, I
Right.
mean, to Bogey's point about some of the, maybe the new ways we should be looking at these numbers, but certainly not for this cycle.
No, absolutely. And I think this is a good chart. It kind of makes the point that we are all saying that the valuation is not proportional, or the tax is not proportional to the valuation, right? So it certainly shows that. And I'm sorry, I'll go back to the previous question about capital funds and debt. Just to make sure, in the forecast, have we included any forecast or actual numbers for the capital fund that we year to year have to, the capital, from the capital articles that we have to fund for? For example, this year I think it's 1.4, last year it was 1 million, right? So in this chart, how much is it projected for next year and the, say, next 3 years?
So that's, an estimate for next year is not included. So what the dotted line here is what's proposed for this coming town meeting. I think part of the value in this chart, your point is very well taken, that we can use this to analyze, maybe this is the time for a new fire station or a new school or whatever that might be. So that's part of the value of the tool, but we can also certainly work in some assumptions to show what that might look like in a visual form as well.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, so it doesn't include some of these known recurring capital expenses, so to speak.
Beyond what's proposed.
Beyond what's proposed, yeah, that's what I thought. So maybe we can, in the narrative or somewhere, we can explain that. So again, I want to make sure that directional, kind of representation of the information is well understood. That this is not, this is based on the, as you just said, exact current state of things and that we know of.
Right.
But what we anticipate happening, whether it be new fire station or, expansion or more work for Elmwood School and such, those are not, of course, included. And nor is the year-to-year capital expenses that we see coming every year. It's not a surprise. I mean, we can pretty much anticipate that next year also we'll see some of that is not also included. Right?
So that's all, and the opportunity to do that is the area to the right and above the dashed line, right? And the question is whether your ceiling for that line is up higher or down lower. And so if you're, and I'm pointing to the wall instead of looking at the version, because I just sent you a different file. So if you look at this and your ceiling is 6 million, and what you really think it is 6 million, we don't have an opportunity to build another school till 2025. But if you think it's 8 million, we probably have an opportunity to build the school in 2022, 2023.
And
that's the discussion.
That's assuming no other capital articles pass between now and then.
Right, because that dashed line is gonna add every year. That's what we learned by adding those two lines. We were getting ready to report the solid line, and we thought, wait a minute, there are decisions in this document, there are decisions that have been made, so there will be that layer, that normal layer every year of the new fire truck and the new.
I mean, this almost begs the town to consider if there's gonna be a new fire station, or if there's gonna be a new school, to smooth it out, because I feel like we go through these growth spurts, and then we build. So we built
Suddenly-
the new police station, and the
Eventual
fire
long-term plan.
station, and like, one of the schools all at once, and then we stop for a while. And then with the library and the DPW. and
So,
another
so,
school.
you know, you are selling the commercial for long-term capital planning.
Right.
And which we should be looking at a couple things. What is the state of our infrastructure? What's our deferred maintenance? Because you don't want to defer to the point that you double your costs. And then what's your recapitalization? And is that next thing you want really the most important thing? And to do that prioritization. And again, last meeting, we talked about excluded debt being the likely path. If we're going to stay at 2.5%, growth slows, and we have contractual obligations to give pay raises, the math makes it kind of hard to think there's going to be headroom within the tax levy limit. So these things, we're going to have to be looking at excluded debt, which is the preferred method for the town.
And
I
that
think you
capital
summarized
plan-
it well, certainly, summarized it well, and that's the, I think, theme that we have been hearing and saying again and again, that we need long-term capital planning, long-term
Yes, that's why I'm here.
connected strategic
That's-
planning.
And that's something that we had a committee pulled together, how many years ago was that? 6 years ago?
I think we did in 10 or 11 that
I
long.
think it was 2012, I saw the plan, and
Yeah,
with some
so-
great work, but we really need.
We haven't maintained it, and we haven't
Yeah.
moved forward, that was more existing.
Yes, we need less continuously, less than that intensiveness continuously, because it's
Right.
always gonna change, right?
Exactly.
Going out, new things are gonna happen, new challenges are gonna emerge. So we need to be less precise, but still robust, and be agile,
Right.
and really
At each-
scope it
At
out.
each year at town meeting, we should be able to incorporate that plan into this chart.
I'd like to see a roving red block, you know, across that graph that shows the new school, if there's a new fire station, if there's recapitalization of a fleet of vehicles somewhere, whatever major things are, and start to plan that out. So there's great, you heard the fire chief come in and talk about his planning, DPW does planning, the schools do planning, we don't have an integrated town planning approach, and we need that.
That's actually what we did in 2013, the famous Ron Eldridge slide. Yeah, and it just showed because we predicted the three big buildings.
Right, and you were right.
The impact, and it went, and all of a sudden the selectmen were like, why are you putting that up there?
Don't put that up, okay.
And, you know, so that's really important information, but you had the other things, you know, when we saw, as you can see, when we're working the budgets, as we have these big increases on like the debt in the last 2 years, we really had to push back on other things to kind of lessen the blow. So even, that's why the slide, even though it's very honest, that here's the cost of each capital project, that it gets kind of scary, because we always find other ways that, all right, we can't have initiatives in other areas during those years, or we can't do more turf fields those years.
So, but it's not like we're beating our diet rules in managing to stay overweight. We are actually getting things done by being creative and agile. So we're getting good things done. We're expanding the sidewalks this year. We are adding that ladder truck. It's not like we're being innovative to stay fat and to stay excessive. We are, I think the town government's doing a very good job, and I take no credit for it, because I just got here, but is doing a very good job about rising to the challenge and fine-tuning that prioritization in the near term.
I do think there's I want to kind of move on.
Okay.
We could talk about this all day, but I do think that because we had the three projects coming online at once, the spike that you see at the top, we don't want to say, well, as long as we stay at that top, we're okay. That was a very painful top, and we want to be a little below that, just because all the three projects came online at the same time, so they didn't have there was no smoothing previously to get up to that point, and we needed to come down.
Got it. And I don't want to digress and get us off track, but there's a lot of interest in the housing stratification. I just shared that file with you. If you just want to glance at it or not, you can glance at it some other
Before we
time.
leave the charts, in the AC report last year, we had a little bit of an explanation under each one. It wasn't just a chart put out there, that kind of explained what was going on. And I do think that's very helpful, and it takes a lot of work. I apologize, it was Pam doing it all last year, but I don't know if we want to include that
Yeah, those charts,
All of the charts, so like the one we just looked at, if you look at last year's report, there was a little blurb that said, this is going up or going down because of, let me find that one.
those charts are actually new this year. So the ones last year had, I have last
Similar,
year's
yeah,
report right in
yeah.
front of me.
I
And there
got it
was,
wrong.
a sentence or less.
So the one that we were kind of looking at, which is more of a bar chart. Okay, and I was looking at, there's another one, what page am I on, 11? This one. So very similar, just kind of a different format, but we said, the large decrease in debt service reflects the high school being paid off. It should be noted there'll also be a decrease from the MSBA. So we had a dialogue,
Yeah.
which I think is helpful because I don't know that, if you just look at this chart, I don't know if the average taxpayer is going to understand it, so.
Okay.
Being able to.
Well,
go-
step one was to see if you liked the chart, and,
Is it too repetitive to have both of the charts in there, even though it's kind of saying the same thing, but from a different perspective?
The bar chart and then.
Yeah, the bar chart.
so the bar chart was really a short-term, it only
It
went
was
to
a much, yeah, it was
2023.
very short.
And it
Yeah.
looked back, and it went to 2023.
You can take this.
So it really doesn't give you the story we're trying to tell.
But I think that, because we really, based on the conversation we're having right now, that kind of bar chart still holds too, and I think it's just another perspective to put on it to show in the short term, here's the spike, and we kind of want to get that spike down again
Well,
before we consider.
so the same data is represented there, except that's a 40-year picture instead of a 5-year picture. If you would like to,
40 years doesn't tell us a whole lot, just because we're going to do a lot of
Building before
new
that,
maintenance and buildings
Right.
in the next 40 years, so.
yeah, I guess that's what I see, is that opportunity is the area to the right and above the dashed line.
Right.
And, but I built the chart, so I understand it. So maybe it's, maybe it's not as clear. So do you want the old chart and you want narrative?
Is it worth doing both, or?
So we're moving toward a Monday meeting then, because we
Yeah.
can't do this on the
I think
fly.
my narrative would be helpful,
Okay,
only because not everything is, as
Right.
clear as we say and talk about it.
And we've been looking at this and we understand
Right,
it.
yeah, we
but,
understand more than others.
Because, and probably we can cut and paste a lot of the text that was already in there, just update the numbers, yeah.
The underlying data is all there, so
Right.
it's
And
certainly.
I think the text was just describing what the chart was, so except for, I'm hoping it won't be a huge
Okay.
effort.
Sure, absolutely.
okay, but we still have to do it, so.
But certainly appreciate the effort, Tim. It reflects a lot of information, and that's why we're asking so many questions.
Yeah.
Another question I had, maybe you have it on top of your head. Our general stabilization fund is 3+ million right now? General
Excuse-
stabilization fund?
The stabilization fund is 3.4 million.
Right, and the capital stabilization is around
220,000? 320.
320. So is that very common that the capital is so low?
So, yes and no. So it appears as though we don't necessarily fund our reserves in town as would be suggested. So what we're doing is we're taking the pool that we have been getting, and that's the free cash pool, and making that fully available to the capital process to take care of all those things in addition to any deficits that exist in the current operating year. So that's the first priority. When we get the free cash, we look at what's our potential deficit for snow and ice that we'll have to cover. So we'll take and we'll set that aside, and then the rest of it will be made available to the capital process. That doesn't necessarily mean that we would use it that way.
Right,
That's what
That's how it has been.
I've seen over the last 3 years,
No,
going backwards.
What kind of reserve fund would other towns put capital? Like, is there a capital reserve fund that other towns will have, or?
Some towns have
Yeah,
them.
and actually, the town I came from, the town of Harvard, has a bylaw written into it that you fund any deficits, you fund the 5% of the general stabilization that we talked about the other day, and then everything else goes into the capital stabilization fund, and you have to appropriate from there.
Okay,
Now,
we're digressing.
seems like we have a healthy general stabilization fund, so is there any thought of pushing more on the capital stabilization?
Well, I think Mike raised that.
Or you weren't here,
Oh, I'm sorry.
earlier this week, because this started back in probably 2012, where it was like a great idea in 2012 to have a capital stabilization fund, so, because we used to, at the time, we would get a fire truck or something and borrow on it. If we had a capital stabilization fund, we're always putting into it, and you finally would build it up, so all these trucks and things, you just take out of that instead of borrowing,
Which we're doing again
and
now.
paying interest. And we never actually borrowed from it. We put it in for 1 or 2 years, and then interest rates got low, and it wasn't as, when you're paying, I don't know, what's our short-term borrowing rate, is it 3% or?
Well, yeah,
It's under that.
less.
It's
So
like
it-
2.7.
Yeah, so, back in 2011, 2012, it was higher than that.
So we're at the point in this budget with the limit of the tax impact, that if you want to raise the capital stabilization fund, you're going to have to take it out of the OPEB, or you're going to have to take it out of the operating stabilization fund, or you're going to have to not hire the new police sergeant or the new firefighters. But it's a closed box. Now, if you want to have a discussion of, it would be a different discussion to say, should we have more than a 2.5% tax impact and increase our stabilization funds? That's a different discussion. When you talk about taking out of one stabilization fund to put it in another, it's really a $5 bill from your left pocket into your right pocket. When you talk about not hiring a public health nurse, that's actually something different.
No.
That's
That's a great point. I think that's right. Now, I have two comments to that. One is, I think it almost always leads to our strategic planning and long-term planning, that how we tie these and actually plan. When, we send, my son is going to go to college soon, so I did want to start planning early on, right? If you want to buy a house, you want to start planning early on. It's not exactly the same, but we do need to think about those. That's one. And second is, I'm thinking, do you feel that, or when do you think we would feel comfortable, okay, we have 3.5 million for operating stabilization, maybe that's sufficient based on the variance we have seen over the last few years. Now let's start accumulating more on the capital stabilization.
So-
And as Mike was mentioning earlier, that it was intended, and that's a great intention, I think originally how it started, that fire trucks and the like can be funded through that. But now we are seeing even this year that fire trucks and others, we are going back to borrowing again.
Right, so I would, I think, argue that once we get to the 5%, the 4.3 million mark on the operating stabilization, to the extent that we have money to put in stabilization, it should shift to OPEB or capital stabilization. Either one would be a prudent thing to do. And then you have to balance that with the levy limit that people want to achieve and what the real new growth needs are. Will we need another firefighter or more teachers, given growth? I mean, that's exactly the kind of thing you'd want to lay out and show the trade-offs.
So, and we kind of discussed this at the last meeting about how, I think several of us on the committee, we didn't take a vote, don't feel like we're funding some of these funds as they should be. I don't know if we want to add something. I know we do have our narrative. I mean, we do talk about how we don't think it's funded, but we said the same thing last year and it still wasn't funded. So I don't know if we want to make a stronger statement in this narrative to say, we should be funding some of these funds a little bit.
Actually, that's a
We
great,
as a committee
yeah,
would. If we do, I don't think we're going to vote on that.
right. And somehow we communicate it more strongly, or maybe another chart if someone looks at it.
We haven't really gotten any writing done so far tonight. What we've got is new ideas and new requirements, and we have a deadline Monday. So we can work on the ideas, but we need to land this plane at some point.
So do we want to, as a committee, take a stance that's a little bit stronger than what's written in the narrative here about the OPEB and potentially the stabilization? And, you know, and say we advised last year to add more, and again this year,
I think so. That's my opinion,
yeah.
but,
Are you on page 3
I'm
or?
on
three.
page 3, the very last paragraph.
Great. And we had a little placekeeper there, we just took it out, because we thought you might, we didn't know if you would want to try to vote tonight. Well, we're in a meeting, and the chair has a mouse and a keyboard, and you can, it's your report, and you can, we're in a posted meeting, so you could add a sentence or add a comment, and it might be better than the other iterative opportunities we have.
Right, exactly.
Well, the thing to make it stronger is that this has been a trend. This isn't the first year that we're underfunding it. The trend over the last couple of years that we're continuously underfunding OPEB, and we're just kicking the can down the road,
Yeah.
which I won't write in there, but,
We could even add something at the very end. This has been a trend over the past, you know, few years that we think needs to change or something. But then we're adding at a negative.
right, yeah. And I think, Tim, you gave quite a few good data, right? We have 27 million in liability, we are funded up to, 9 million, and it's gonna be 2090 when we'll actually reach our commitments.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, so-
I think the numbers are like 29 and 2.3, but you're basically,
Oh, okay.
you're on it.
Oh, 29 and 2.3.
I
so
think it's
worse.
29 million as the liability, and I shouldn't be speaking from memory on this, but,
So just, I'm thinking those numbers, at least with me, resonates
oh, it's in the report, so let me just flip.
to show the kind of severity of the challenge, so to speak.
All right,
Mike, would we want to consider moving it? I mean, when I looked at this, I thought it was,
we're 3.25% funded is where we are,
For,
OPEB.
would we want to move this higher in the letter? I mean, it just seems
yeah, I know. it's-
burying it.
Negative
Oh,
note,
that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That, not burying, bad word, that far down. Yeah, I'll just make one line. The one thing that stuck out to me with this, I obviously get other folks' thought, but the next 3 years shows budgets will continue to stress tax. I just don't like the use of stress there. I don't want to second guess somebody's
Yeah.
writing, but it just,
Yeah, that's
Burden.
a good point.
I like burden.
Where are you at? Lee?
It's the paragraph that Mike is working on right now. It's the second
okay.
line.
Can we just say we'll continue to increase?
okay.
Are you looking for a stronger?
I'm looking for stronger, because that's
Okay.
what I hear in folks.
Burden sounds better
I like
than
burden,
stress.
yeah.
agree.
I mean, stress, we're not making them exercise. I just think it's kind of,
74-page document, if you're changing stress to burden, we're gonna take that as a good outcome. So, it's good.
and just one other point, to some of the items that were in yellow.
Right.
I know we talked about limiting them to cost drivers, not to increase the work, but was the plan to put 1 year's data in there? Because it seems like some of those would really feed into the narrative of
Growth, yeah.
growth and growth and the impact on the police department, on the fire department. Again, with 3 days left, I don't think, for this
Yeah,
cycle.
this is really an excellent February discussion, and, you know, I'm just catching up to the process, so.
Completely understood,
No,
I
time
know.
series, it would be ideal to do time series data
Yeah.
for all these metrics to show how the trends are going.
Yeah.
And that certainly would be the next iteration. We're trying to figure out what portion of the loaf we could bite off in this timeframe.
Did we talk about last time that we also want to add that we're using free cash for our operational budget?
Do we want to maybe put a paragraph that says, you know, some of the things in the budget that we'd recommend changing are funding, you know, instead of having a separate one, funding some of these stabilization funds, the OPEG and stabilization more fully, and also not using free cash for operating funds or something?
So.
Or you just want to point it out and not have it be a...
So you're gonna produce a report Monday night, the selectmen are meeting Tuesday night, but I don't know that they have the opportunity to change this budget now.
I'm not asking them to change the
Even
budget.
if they want
I'm
to,
just-
but for forward-looking,
Yeah,
you might make a forward-looking statement
Yeah.
to say, you know, these are, objectives for the Appropriations Committee, or, I don't know, how you wanna do it,
We can comment it as an observation and our advice.
As I was gonna say, could it be a talking point?
Right, yeah.
This is part of my things we will focus on in future years.
things we'd recommend the town focus on?
Is recommending they be addressed
Yeah.
Yeah.
in future budget
Yeah.
cycles?
I don't know that it's true that they can't change the budget
Yeah.
at that point.
I don't know.
Actually, we
what
changed
their
the operational
opportunity-
budget.
I don't know if it's on the agenda, I don't know what the, I don't wanna run afoul of the timing of the town meeting, that's my,
So, but we're supposed to be making recommendations, that's what the charter asks us to do, so technically we could. I know it's not done, but that doesn't mean we don't have the right or the authority to make a recommendation.
right?
I agree, yeah.
I think when we say recommend here, we're not recommending that we change the budget. I think we're just recommending that this is paid attention to in the future, because I think it's not something that jumps up from a board of selectmen perspective or from other, board perspective. This is one of those things that, I think as an appropriations committee, we've got to be helping to set the financial policy on these things.
I think if that's the approach, then in addition to writing it here, it should be something that is delivered in a meeting with the Board of Selectmen, so that they're actually hearing it.
So Tuesday's the last, is the meeting, and I don't know, do I have to request to say ahead of time in part of their agenda, or if I show up?
The agenda hasn't been
Is there-
sent out. I
is there a
certainly
budget?
think it would be, worthwhile to make a request to him, so
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah, because if someone doesn't deliver it verbally, then
Yeah, it's not gonna resonate as much. yeah.
it's definitely not gonna be remembered next year
Yep.
when budget time comes around.
Although, some people should read it closely.
I was going to say, if this is, this is, then the way that the budget process is working isn't as effective as it could be. So that's something to look at next year as well, yeah.
That's one of the reasons that, I'd like to see this group involved in the process a little bit more heavily. I know that the chair, goes to the advisory group meetings and things like that, but, it's a lot to expect one person to remember everything you want to bring into the next year.
Right.
And I don't think it's outrageous to expect, this group to be involved in an earlier process.
And I also I think you suggested at a recent meeting that maybe the appropriation meeting meets in the fall or the summer before the budget starts to also identify some financial policies we might want to, again, suggest,
Yeah.
recommend as they're developing the budgets.
So also, in the interest of full disclosure too, there was one item that was in the capital budget that's going to be paid for via free cash for senior center cameras. After some consultation with the CIC and a rethinking of the number of cameras, that number came down below their purview. So that was, on a procedural note, moved to the operating budget. So we would see an increase. I think the stormwater was in there last time, but essentially the same thought process, that because it's not in the CIC purview, it was moved to the operating budget. But because the budget had been set in the 2.5% tax impact reached. That's why there wasn't any other change.
Thank you.
Good point, thanks.
Mike's still wordsmithing, again, great TV.
Now we're using burden twice in the same paragraph, Mr. Chair.
You want to take a stab at it?
We do minutes, you do this.
Impacting the underfunded reserve, underfunded. Is it liability?
It's kind of like watching, when someone tries to make an amendment to a motion at town meeting.
It's almost as exciting as C-SPAN sometimes.
I'd like to see our commitment increased, or this committee would like to see a change.
We'd like to see it brought in line with actuarial recommendations.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, are you planning on going to Tuesday's meeting and?
I can go to Tuesday's meeting.
Okay.
So
Can have two people.
you try to get him on the agenda?
I will talk with Maria tomorrow morning.
I know that we haven't voted on any of this stuff for recommendations, but at the last meeting, I was, mentioning the line item for the Hopkinton Day celebration. I think that message should be brought to the board as well.
Can we vote on it to make sure we all support it, that there's majority?
That's why I said we haven't voted on it.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure that change in the budget was entirely visible to everyone there.
We can definitely discuss that, and I think it really comes down to, because it probably will be a transfer, an account transfer at the end of the year, and I'm sure Ben, Dave, Tim, you have an idea of I know where accounts are these days. I don't know if it waits till a week before, what do you have, 10 days or a couple of weeks and before or after the end of the fiscal year to make the adjustments. Mm-hmm. And usually
Yeah, through July 15.
There must be something else in the budget that can be waiting for those transfers to happen and those numbers to clear up. I just don't think it's a good look. And I think that the townspeople who are on the boards and committees in town should be representing that day is important to the town from a cultural perspective. And I think it should just be funded, period, without waiting to find the change in the couch.
Was that 25,000 or was that 30?
30,000.
And I'll reiterate that I disagree. And I think it's actually not a good use of taxpayer money overall, so. Which is why I suggest a vote so that you can be representing the majority of the Appropriations Committee. If we're going to discuss it as the chair. I may be the only one who disagrees.
Sorry, I missed the first part. Where are we moving it from? Or proposing to move it from?
It's not funded right now.
Right.
There's a line item and they remove the funding for it, but the anticipation is there'll be some end of year.
So where are we gonna get the money from?
Yeah, we have do account transfers at the end of the year.
At that time?
Yes, and we think we can obligate the money at the end of this year instead of doing it next year.
That would be done with no impact, no overall impact.
I'm sorry?
So there'd be no overall impact to the spend, it would be a...
It would be,
It would to free cash.
we'll have some less free cash a year and a half from now, or 13, 15 months from now.
And
Right, that's the way it cycles
If we're considering paying from this year.
this year. So the free cash will get certified this summer, and that's what we'll be spending next year in the 2021 budget. So it'll be a little less money in the $30,000 less in free cash to support capital articles in the 2021 budget. I think that's the flow.
Did we discuss what are the kind of drivers? It's the cultural
Yeah,
aspect of
no,
it.
I think that, you know, we had this discussion the other day, but yeah, I want to make sure that you have the other side of the story as well. From the sounds of it, I don't think that this year, that $30,000 would be in danger of being funded. You know, it sounds like after all is said and done with expenses, it'll be found, and after the budget's already been passed, there'll be a way to put $30,000 back in there. I personally don't think that that's the way to approach a day that's recognizing our community. I think it's a relatively small line item, and I think that the meaning of funding that right from the start, as opposed to waiting to see what we have left over from the prior year, I think that that holds value as well. So if we're that confident that there's going to be $30,000 left from other funds that we can transfer, let's find it somewhere else in the budget, but let's put that line item for Hopkinton Day back. And, you know, and I mentioned the other day, I just remember, you know, the 300th anniversary celebration, and, you know, what a unifying event. Now, granted that there were events going much longer than one day, but that one particular night that everything was happening behind the schools, that was a pretty unifying evening in town. And while the town has other big days through the year, and we just went through one with the marathon, this is the one that's really focused on the townspeople of Hopkinton. And I think it's important to just let everybody know that this is funded. This isn't relying on extras from the prior year.
Do we want to take a vote on this?
I would like to, yeah.
So somebody would have to make I think,
Right.
some motions, seconds, votes, and you can,
I move that the Appropriations Committee vote to recommend to the Board of Selectmen to reinstate the $30,000 line item allocated to the annual Hopkinton Day celebration.
Second?
Do we want to have more discussion or just vote on it?
I just want to add a little bit. I think, you know, it's a tough call because, in a way, it's a tough call because we do want to be vigilant of the costs. And we again and again see that resonating theme that we do need to watch out more and more. I think that's where, you know, it's coming from. But the same note, I'm just giving out my perspective. I think I agree that this does weigh into the community's kind of unifying or united celebration, as well as making it a special event for the families and the whole town. And comparing that, and it's probably not the same quantifiable value that's measurable. I think I would see the value, you know, more from a emotional side of things in this particular case. And because it's not a big line item, that's why I think I'm looking at it a little bit more favorable. But I totally see your perspective,
Yeah.
and I respect that.
And I'll just state my perspective
Yeah.
is that this is something that is half of an FTE for the school. We're giving, you know, we're monitoring very closely how much we're spending on FTEs. And it's not an insignificant cost if you're thinking it of personnel. Other towns, they have other organizations that pay for these. You know, the town of Natick, or the town of Needham has a huge 4th of July fireworks. The Lions Club is the one that funds that. In other areas of the country, you get, you know, different companies in the area support it, so I don't know why it has to be coming from taxpayers. I think the town it's a great idea, it's a great unifying thing. I don't think we've ever looked for funding outside of the taxpayers, and I'm not sure that it's something that just kind of goes off from the sky, and if you're not in town, you don't benefit from it, and really is just bird and stuff in the sky is worth that much money.
No, I think the argument is very compelling, absolutely. But can we come to some understanding that we will make a strong recommendation of looking for other funds, but at the same time, we go with it for now? Does that balances it? In other words, we can pencil it in, but our recommendation will be for these types, can we look for other sources and sponsorship and other things in a more proactive manner?
Could you add that to the motion? So I'm on the fence, it's very agreeable to you. However, having the family and I, as many of us have enjoyed these events in the past, I do think they bring the community together. Will not have an immediate impact on this year's taxes, if I understand. I don't think we're there yet as a town where we need to be pulling this stuff. Maybe a different discussion in another year. I certainly see your point, Rebecca. Find an agreement, and I think it may be a little short-term to try and fund this for this year or for 20 by going to the town. I'm sure you could, you can think of companies around town and we could certainly hit up, but could we maybe amend the motion to add a recommendation for future funding? So pass it this year, but I don't know how you would do that.
I think that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, that's your point. If
Kind
it
of
can be
directionally try to correct it, but couldn't agree more on that. And that's a very compelling argument. I mean, when you compare it with the teachers and some of the other urgent stuff, I mean, that's undeniable, right?
Yeah.
I think that it's absolutely reasonable to set up a committee to try to, if not fully, at least partially fund these through private funds as well.
And that could happen next year. I mean, we could ask that someone does try to fund it, and we don't have to use that money if they can find some private funding.
I also think that while if we want, we can boil $30,000 into half an FTE. We could do that with so many other things in town as well, and start, pitting, one cause versus another. I could come up with a lot of things that aren't necessary in town, but could certainly raise the ire of people and say, well, that's a half an FTE, or that's a quarter FTE, or that's a full FTE. And I don't think we need to get to that level. But again, I just think that it's important that this line item is recognized. It has been funded over the last several years, and I think that we should be continuing that. And if the Board of Selectmen chooses in future years to put together a committee to do more fundraising, then obviously that would be great. Whether it's taking this line item altogether or adding to it to make it bigger.
Well, my final thought is, I'm in the middle here where,
Let's see.
Let's see, that's what we're sitting here.
literally, where I do think it's important for the town to have, but I do think there is a funding strategy for it, and I don't think it should be added to the line item, but I do think we'll find a way to fund it, as we're talked about, and I think it's probably one of the higher items on the list that we use at the end of the budget season, or the fiscal year. And if it's not there, then Plan B is to get private funding and fundraising to help out there, but I don't think that'll be the case, because it's not, like we said, we need the teachers, there's certain operational things we absolutely have to have. This is not one of the things we have to have, but I think, it's great to have, and I think we should have it, and I think the funding will be there this year. So that's why I'll probably vote no, just because I think it still will be funded. Ready for a vote, or does anyone else have anything else they want to say?
That's a good point. So I think you wanted the certainty, but we do feel that there is certainty in many ways.
Well, no, and I don't doubt that there's certainty, but I think it's the message behind the act that is just as important, and that's my thought process. And yeah. So.
And I'm trying not to do my personal, because I was at the 300th, I thought it was great too, but then the next year, I had other things that weekend, and I didn't make it, so I don't know how the turnout was next year. I assume it was still pretty good, so I'm not going to be biased about that. And it wouldn't be in the budget, or, I'm sorry, it wouldn't even have been talked about if it wasn't still popular, so I'm making the assumption that it is still popular.
Right. I think Mike convinced me. I think emotionally I'm there, but I also think that it is going to be funded in some ways. And while we, talk so much about fiscal discipline, I think this gives us an opportunity to also send that message.
Well, it's like being on a diet and then, saying, but I really, really can't have that cookie ever,
Making it hard for us.
I think, my point is, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, I'm just saying there's alternative ways to fund it, that's all, but it doesn't have to be taxpayer. I think it's a great idea, and it's a fun day, and as you said, it brings the community together, but let's find another way to find the money.
So can I propose, if we vote and it doesn't pass, can we put another motion to fund it through other means? Or
The commitment is to
I don't
fund
think
it.
that's necessary,
This motion is to bring it up to the Board of Selectmen and discuss it with them, that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's not we're gonna vote it in or out of the budget, so,
Yeah, and I don't want anybody feeling uncomfortable, like if they vote against this, they're gonna offend me, because I'll go as a citizen and just, speak to the Board of Selectmen on my own without, without this committee, so, don't feel like you have to vote my way so that I don't get my feelings hurt.
no, because I wanted to have it.
all right, we have an $80 million budget we have to start getting approvals for, and we're stuck on this,
$30,000, yeah, I have fun.
all right, can we have a vote on the motion to bring up with the Board of Selectmen that we want to fund Hopkinton Day celebration? All those in favor of bringing it up, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
So 3-2, it passes, bring it up.
You guys sure you understood the question?
It's with your feelings.
Do you think you're unanimous on the OPEB funding, or do you want to debate and vote that?
This is just the wording in the shared document, right?
Are you going to bring it up to this Board of Selectmen as well?
I don't think that was controversial, was it? Was anyone in disagreement?
Let's do a quick vote. I move that we approve the language to support fully funding to the actual recommendation, the OPEB trust fund to the Board of Selectmen's attention.
Second.
Discussion? Up for it.
We got agreement on the two ends, so that means.
Okay.
So was that the vote?
No, yeah. Any other discussion? This is discussion.
No, okay.
I didn't, if you,
When you said for it, I thought, okay.
I said, that's my discussion, though. I think everyone's been talking about it,
Yeah.
unless anyone has a
I think
dissenting
it needs to
view.
be highlighted.
Okay, let's just, you're doing the minutes, right, Shahid?
I'll watch the,
I wrote down both motions. The first was to motion to recommend the Board of Selectmen reinstate the Hopkins Day line item in the budget, and the second was to approve the language to support fully funding the actuary recommendation to the Board of Selectmen.
I was wondering how, you know. Okay, we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of bringing up to the Board of Selectmen about fully funding OPEB, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. I'll bring it up. Finally, I think the last item was going into the operational budget using free cash. That's the first year in many years, and I don't like that. Hopefully, it's a one-time thing, but it should be made aware that this is not, at least to this committee, it's not a financially prudent thing to do. But I'll make unless I was the only one. I don't think I was the only one, but
what's the motion again? Sorry.
I'll make a motion just to bring up to the Board of Selectmen that we're using free cash for operational budget, and that's not a good trend, or it's not even a good practice this year alone.
Yeah, I'd say even a little stronger. It's not good practice, and I mean, I think it's misleading. You know, when we start talking about the 2.5% impact and things like that, I mean, I think that it's pretty well accepted over the years that that's not something we want to do. And then to do it, to cap a number at 2.5%, that's just not a good thing.
Okay.
Especially when it's not going to Hopkins Day.
Did anyone second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any more discussion, or is that ready for a vote? All those in favor of bringing up the fact of using free cash for operational budget should not be done, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mike,
5-0.
No, good. I'm sorry, I wanted to reverse the other motion if there is room to do it, because when I think Ben phrased it, I understood it. The way I understood the first time you said that was that we are recommending to fund it from other sources. I'm talking about the Hopkinton Day. But
Wait, whose motion was it? Was it Rebecca's motion, or was it Todd's motion?
yeah, that's why I was confused that
No, he
What,
just moved to reinstate the dollars.
moving
in the
with.
celebration.
Todd was saying put it
After I
in the-
checked if you understood the question.
there were two motions that were supposed to come up, right? One was that put it in the line item. One was that not put it in the line item, but propose that we fund it from other means.
I think that was
But which one was proposed was the first one, I think.
First,
putting in, Todd moved to reinstate it into the celebration, reinstate the
sorry.
dollars into the
With
celebration.
a recommendation that in
Line
future
Right.
years, they try to find other funding
Other-
sources.
Yeah, so I wanted to actually vote no on that because I didn't fully understand the way it was phrased. Can we reverse that? No.
I want to put it in the right
I'm going
context.
home with my ball now.
Unless Todd
No, I
chooses
think,
to bring it up
no, I
again.
think that, no, as a committee, we can vote to, basically retract that vote, and,
As long as you are one,
You have to make the motion.
because you
Yeah.
you voted for it,
Mhm.
and it passed, I think you have the right to bring, I cannot bring it up.
No, I thought
Or Rebecca
Todd
can.
did as the one who,
But it doesn't have to be the one who.
I think that's to retract it altogether, to
Okay.
retract the motion. I mean, you know, it's nice for us all to be absolutely formal and get this stuff right, but I think that we all understand that,
yeah.
you know,
But the thing is,
yeah, that, A, it's legal to do, and, you know, and B, you know, it's, Shahid Joe misunderstood, so.
So, are you undoing the direction to talk about Hopkinton Day? Is that
Yeah.
Right.
Rebecca?
Yeah.
And you're just gonna go as an individual?
Is there an actual motion?
To retract
Oh,
that vote?
I'm not gonna retract it, but.
I move the motion to reverse the,
I think, is it revert?
You know, you have to, we have to retract it and then do it again.
retract the warrant for putting the budget item for the Hopkinton Day.
Recommending.
Anyone second that?
I'll second it. I can't. You guys have to do it, right?
Yeah.
We're talented, or
It's
Robert's
a
rules.
Sorry.
Not my knowledge.
All right.
All right, let's just do a revote. Going back to Hopkinton Day celebration, all those in favor of talking to the Board of Selectmen to say they would like to see it back in a line item in the budget, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No.
Okay, that's 2 out of 3.
Still a 3-2 vote.
Just paper rock.
Sorry.
Okay. Now will not be brought up. Anything else, anything else to bring up to the
Yeah, I
Board of
want to
Selectmen?
change my vote on OPEB now.
Let's do it again.
Is that all?
Just kidding.
Is that
Just
all the,
kidding,
is that all the
Mike.
items? All right, it's 9 o'clock here.
Not too bad.
All right, so that's it? So that's for Tuesday's Board of Selectmen meeting.
So if I could, to the chair, that, so Monday we'll vote to approve the report. The warrant and the motions I passed out this morning, I've understood that the motions, the language doesn't need to be completely finalized to make a recommendation. If it's the decision of the committee, that if the numbers don't change, there could be some legalese adjustments through council. They have not done final approval of that, but the articles in the warrant will be signed by the Board of Selectmen on Tuesday. And included in the Appropriations Committee report are those articles to decide whether the committee votes to approve or recommend or not recommend.
So that's in the report, and you also have a separate package to talk about for the articles.
The motions, yeah, and the motions don't have to be approved verbatim.
We could. So just to catch up where we are, you're going to communicate some things to the board. There are 4 things you've asked for the appropriations report. The first one is to take the metrics out. The second one is to find a target debt level and insert it in that debt chart. You have asked us to look at the subsidy, the debt subsidy in that debt chart. And then you want text for the long-term debt chart.
Actually, if you could look at last year's AC report, it's not just that one particular chart. I think there was text on many of them that explained them.
Okay, so we added a series of, I have it, and there's just not that many, so we can look at it, but why don't I just give you the copy and you can let me know more what you, because we don't have an iterative opportunity, so I want to be exactly sure I can get what you're saying. And then you wanted to add the bar chart back in.
Right. I have a copy of it, so I can.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, I think the benefit when we actually started was not just to have the charts and pictures, it was really to have a simple explanation, to explain all the different things. That's why that was.
So my list again is take out the metrics, have a target debt level on the long-term debt chart, talk about the subsidy, represent the subsidy in the long-term debt chart, add text to the long-term debt charts, because I think that's where it doesn't exist now, and then add the bar chart back in. So I think that's 5 things. Are you copying 2 or?
Yes.
Okay.
That's good.
And then, we will have those things and have them for Monday night, and if they're satisfactory, you can adjust them then, and, we'll vote on the report then. It'll have all the articles in it too,
Correct.
which are in there now.
So Monday night, we're looking at maybe a 15-minute meeting? Is that what
Or
we're
do we,
talking
we
about?
need to vote the motions, though. We need to vote.
You know, you might be able to do a,
So we're gonna be having
Phone
another
meeting.
full meeting.
oh, well, it won't be in this room.
Yeah.
So it'll be somewhere wherever Ben posted
Lower
it.
level or third floor.
Here?
Yeah, I think we can.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't realize we already had a meeting scheduled for Monday, so.
Yeah.
That was added to today, just to be able to meet that deadline.
Do we just have the one meeting next week, or are there?
We weren't gonna have any. Then we're just now talking about the need to have one, so.
Okay,
Maybe a bit late Monday, travel.
okay.
I think having one after Monday is, probably doesn't get you,
Well, we have to get through all
We
the
have to-
motions.
We have to vote on all the motions.
okay?
Yeah.
And do we want to, it's 10 after 9, do we want to
I-
do a couple to see how it goes?
I think it would be great to plow through. Ben is ready. And I think
Okay.
he'd be ready to plow through some. It might go very well.
So the way this could work too is there could be a standing motion if the board so chooses to recommend a vote. And then as long as all board members consent, there doesn't need to be a motion and a second to motion for each article.
Okay.
And which document are we gonna go through?
The one
Is
that
the
you
motions
just-
document or a different document?
I would offer to the committee
So does everybody have,
the articles, not the warrants, or not the motions.
does everybody have
excuse me.
this one that has, this has the motions written out?
So,
Starts with Article
It starts with
2, 3.
supplemental
Yeah, I
appropriation.
have that, but what's the file name online?
That's why I have two of them.
so I would recommend that the articles be reviewed, not the motions at this point, because the motions do not need to be approved for in the Appropriations Committee report.
Right, but there's a lot to go through. So you're saying you want us to just look at them and not vote on them?
Can you be explicit about what document we're
Sure,
working from and
so
what we're gonna do?
it's this document with the first page, Commonwealth of Massachusetts Town of Hopkinton Annual Town Meeting Warrant. Within that are 30 articles that are going to show the approval, the recommendation or the not recommendation in the Appropriations Committee report. In addition to that, the committee will make motions. Those don't need to be approved tonight or as part of the Appropriations Committee report.
Okay,
so those
So
could
you're
be
saying
later.
the one on the warrant, we do have to make recommendations?
Correct.
To be in?
To be included in the warrant.
Correct.
Or to be included in the report.
Be included in the written report and the warrant, excuse me, so. So the first one would be, that is ready, is Article 4, the property tax exemption increase on page 3.
Okay, so the action you would propose this committee take is that somebody makes an initial motion that allows them to approve individual articles they like without formal motions for every one. It's a streamlined method. Can you go through that again?
Correct, so you can choose to make a standing motion to approve, and that can be seconded and then voted on by the committee. And then each time a vote comes up, a vote can be taken without a need for a motion and a second. So it's a bit of a streamlined process, but there's still a vote on every item.
And are we voting to have these included? The vote we're taking is to have these included on the warrant. This isn't because we also will vote whether or not we support it.
Right, so it's the vote to recommend approval.
Okay. So if
So-
we don't approve it, it doesn't mean it won't go on the warrant.
Correct, it'll still go on the warrant, but it will show that the committee does not recommend approval, or recommends no action, I think is the official term.
So our vote is to whether we recommend or not.
Yep, so we don't have to make an emotion, we're just voting on the.
So first you need a motion to adopt this process of going through them. What you called, serial approval or whatever term
Correct.
you had for it. And then somebody has to
motion.
second that, then you have to vote and agree to do that. Then you'd vote on the substance of each thing without the need for motions and second every time.
So I will make the motion that we use the streamlined approval process for these for the recommendation, for the articles requiring appropriation committee recommendation.
I think that's a bingo.
Correct.
I second.
And that doesn't commit you to approving any of them, it just creates the method for going through them.
Less talking.
Just documenting for Shahadul.
Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Discussion? Ready for a vote? All those in favor of the streamlined process, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, motion passes.
So there are a few options for the committee to consider. Article 2 and 3, there are some remaining open items. Article number 2 is the supplemental appropriation and transfers. We don't have the final numbers for those yet. And then the unpaid bills from prior years, the committee could choose to vote on that now, but typically as we go along the process, there may be a few more that pop up. Article 4 would be the property tax exemption increase on page 3. And that one is final.
So we discussed that at our last meeting, and I sent you all a Excel file today, or a Sheets file, and it showed exactly who, what, when, where, the impact of that article is, and it showed a total of a $1,600 increase based on our current users of all those programs. And it includes seniors, surviving spouses, minors with deceased parents, 10% disabled veterans, Purple Heart recipients, surviving spouse of combat fatality, 100% disabled veterans, blind homeowners, and then there's a separate group that's less generous or more generous, seniors over 65 with low threshold income and assets. And the total impact would be $1,600 if we do the COLA for that article. And that's on the file I shared with you today called Summary of Articles, that whole presentation. And this is something that is done every year. They COLA these exemptions, and the chart shows you what they're up to now. The average exemption, for example, for 10% disabled veterans is $746. The exemption for Purple Heart recipients, average of $4, $774. That's the exemption, and it would be COLA'd, and we're just estimating 3%, but the COLA level has not been set.
So are we voting on each one individually, or we're going through the whole list?
Yes.
Correct,
Correct, you'd order each one individually.
But you just have to vote yes or no, you don't have to second and everything
No
else.
motions, Mike, the chairman, just says,
Yes or no?
Yes.
I call a vote on this.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we start with number 2?
Number 4.
Number 4.
You're saying 2 and 3 are not ready, is
Correct.
it?
What about in question 1, we're not going to vote on as a committee?
Correct, it's a board of
Not
selectmen.
within your purview.
Good.
Ma'am, not within your purview.
Okay.
It's not you don't have to.
So we're voting on Article 4, 5, 6, 7? Or one at a time?
So one at a time.
I haven't done this process before, so that's why I'm...
So Article 4, any questions about Article 4, the increase in the property tax exemption? And it was wrong when it said personal property, it's for real property. That's why you see personal crossed out there.
Okay.
Ready for a vote? All those in favor of yes on Article 4, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Perfect.
5-0, carries.
Number 5 is the first of the Brave Acts. I also had the chart that showed that one. That is for the 17, Clause 17 recipients. We only have 17D recipients of all the different ones, which is seniors over 70, and I don't really know why the seniors and minors are in surviving spouses are in the Brave Act, but they are. And there's a higher liquid asset threshold for this one, and no income threshold. It's a less generous benefit. The benefit is $445 a year in exemption, and we have 12 of those people in the town. We estimate the cost of giving them the COLA will be $128. I think I'm getting the hang of that. That's all the data. There's no more data on that. That's every bit of it.
Right, ready to vote on Article 5? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, motion carries. Article 6.
Article 6, this is a new category. There are broad exemptions for veterans and other qualified people that we have just been talking about, but it's only if they own the house themselves. Some people have their house in a trust or a conservatorship. This would extend the benefit to those people. So we don't know if there are a couple of veterans or a couple of low-income elderly or a couple of Purple Heart recipients who have their houses in trusts, but if there are, they would be entitled to this under this provision. And, you know, the benefit ranges from $400 to $1,000 to a complete exemption for the surviving spouse of someone who dies in combat. But we just don't know if there will be any, or if there will be a few.
You ready for a vote on Article 6? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, carries.
Okay. The next one is the exemption for surviving parents. This is the Gold Star parent provision. The Gold Star parents were in currently for a $400 exemption. This would give people who lost a child in combat a complete exemption parallel with what the surviving spouse gets. We have one surviving spouse in town. We don't know if we have any Gold Star parents, but if we do, it would be a complete exemption.
Ready to vote on Article 8? All those in favor of Article 8 say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, carries.
8 or 7?
I'm sorry. Let's do it again. It was Article 7.
7. The last of the Brave Act.
We have to.
Can I do it again? Because I said
Yes.
Article 8. We're voting on Article 7. All those in favor of Article 7 say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, it carries.
Okay, Article 8 extends the senior work program to veterans. So right now, people over 60 can come and work, volunteer for the town up to 125 hours at minimum wage and get a $1,500 credit on their taxes. This would allow veterans of any age to participate in that program. It could be a 28-year-old veteran, it could be a 41-year-old veteran. We would assume that already the 63-year-old veterans are already covered under the senior program. So the new participation in this program would be that group. For the senior work-off, we have 50 participants, and it costs us $62,000 a year because they don't all work the full amount of hours. So we just don't know how many veterans under 60 would take advantage of this, but this extends them that same opportunity that seniors get.
Okay, Article 8, ready for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
Okay, why don't you pick it up here, because that was, the Brave Act was my,
Sure. Article 9 sets the salary of the town clerk by the Board of Selectmen, the amount of, I have the number right here.
We need to vote on Article 9?
No,
Suspense is
that's
killing me.
the Appropriations Committee report, so, excuse me.
well, we're on a roll, you might as well,
Yeah.
unless somebody objects to it, if we can come up with a number.
$69,627.20.
From,
Do we know what,
It's included in the operating budget, so it's part of the omnibus budget, the various funding sources.
What is the increase?
yes, but from what? It's an increase, right?
yeah.
It is, yes. $67,599.22.
69?
$2,021.
3%.
Yeah, about 2.5 probably.
2.5.
A little more.
Yeah, is that something that, is it, I mean, a relatively arbitrary number that gets presented, or is it following the handbook, or anything like that?
We would have
Go
to go
ahead.
back and double check on that, but.
I
we
do
can
believe
certainly
there
come
was,
back.
I think there was a 0% last year.
Was
It
it?
might have been 2 years ago. I know he did take one in one of the recent years, yeah.
All right, ready for a vote? All those in favor of Article 9, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, the motion carries.
So Article 10 is the fiscal operating budget. I think if we were going to talk about the full committee report, that could be something we discuss on Monday.
So we're talking about the content of the report, but nobody has suggested that the report will not concur with the budget. So you could actually do this one now if you choose to do so, because I haven't heard any discussion directing us to prepare a different approach. Right?
Well, do we approve it before we talk to the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, I think we talk to the Board of Selectmen before we approve it.
I don't,
If we're gonna have recommendations,
okay,
then,
okay.
yeah.
So you're gonna approve your report Monday, talk to the selectmen Tuesday, and then address the article later. Is that, okay? That'll work.
Correct.
Okay.
Does approving the report imply that we're approving the budget? Because there's content in there from the budget?
There's a sentence in there now that has not been edited that says, we recommend approval of the budget. That was kind of my point, but, and you haven't directed us to change that, but you could still do it without, I mean, it's a word, so you could do it Monday night.
You know, I mean, it could always be that, and I'm sorry, I don't have it up in front of me, but, you know, if it's worded such that we're approving a budget of, you know, this amount,
I think it
That's
says
what it
the
is.
budget.
That's what it says. I
It
think
is, yes.
says
In the amount of 90,025,252.
90, I thought it was 80.
So,
Yeah, it's all our other sources.
I just want to bring this up, getting into the semantics of the charter, that we have to have the report approved and finalized 14 days before, or we have to have it posted?
You know, this is my first rodeo, but everything we have been saying and doing has been, you know, in setting up the meetings and talking about it, has been talking about this having it done, having the report done before Monday.
Well, we're
So
talking about,
if your experience is that that's not correct, I'm very open to that.
just because, although, did the charter include last year, or was it starting this year? I think it was starting last year.
So we,
So we were, I think we posted it, but I think we're making changes very late. We were still because the budget was so far behind last year. We were
so we talked to the,
I looked at some dates, and we were still talking to departments on the 23rd of April last year. So I don't think we had everything done.
so we talked to the deputy town manager today about this, and she said, that's what the charter says, but it could be late. And it's not there's no penalty or
I don't think
fine.
the charter actually has the calendar in it. That was supposed to be voted outside every year. The budget calendar is set. They didn't put it in the charter. They specifically were trying to avoid it.
I believe it's a specific provision about 14 days for the Appropriations Committee
So
report,
that
which I believe is
is-
separate from what you're referencing.
Great, it always crunches on us.
So,
Are we
I mean,
anticipating that after we speak to the Board of Selectmen, that final amount's going to be changed?
I don't want to say then, why are we
It's just
spending the
not,
time?
if I could just lend an observation. So this is the document for all the people. So if you post something that's not finished and they don't go back and get the updated version, there's gonna be a lot of questions that come up on,
Okay.
you know, the night of town meeting. So if we're not ready, I would
It's not that
I
it's,
would put, you know, use that as a means to make your judgment.
it's not that it's not ready, but sometimes we ended up, some numbers in the budget change. I don't even want to say the night of town meeting, but
Yeah.
that has happened, you
That's
know.
happened a lot.
That has happened, therefore our document is out of date. And here we are, 2+ weeks away
So the language we use, well, it says proposed.
That could be a motion issue, how we deal with motions. Because at town meeting, people can make motions on articles anyways. So if we're consistent with how we do that, you know, and not make the change outside once the booklet's published, I would suggest any change has to be made through the motions.
Right.
And just an observation again, it's just trying to help and assist with the process.
So maybe a bylaw and not the charter. I'm surfing the charter right now. So it could be a town bylaw rather than the charter. But, you know, it seems like you're quite close. So there's that. We have that.
Because, I mean, we haven't waited until town meeting day to publish the AC report. We try to, you know, I think.
Well, you have to, we print it, but we generally could print it a day or two before.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
but we usually, I thought it had to be completed online a certain time before.
You know, I think again, some of it comes down to, how comfortable is each member with the overall number of the budget. From there, you know, we do have recommendations for possible, well, at least one recommendation for a possible change in the OPEB number. You know, if people are comfortable voting on the final overall budget number as it's stated in the report, and, you know, inside saying, all right, I'm comfortable with the budget, whether or not they put the extra 225 into OPEB, then it seems like we could vote on the document right now. If there's anybody sitting here saying, yeah, I'm comfortable with the overall budget number, provided that they move another 225 into OPEB from somewhere else, well, then that's a different story. You know, then if I was that person, I wouldn't vote to approve the report until I find out what the Board of Selectmen intends to do.
Are we gonna find out on Tuesday, or will it take more time if we?
I would think that what will happen on Tuesday is that the Board of Selectmen, as long as they have room to still change the budget, I would think what they would do is have some discussion around it. If they feel the same way and they're in agreement, then they may ask the finance team and the town manager to go off and make some recommendations on funding that other 225 without impacting the 2.5%. And if they do that, then it might change after Tuesday. I don't see it, I would be shocked if it changed on Tuesday, unless the town manager's watching us right now and starting to prepare some alternative script.
I just looked at the section of Appropriations Committee on the bylaw, and there's no reference to a.
So page 20 of the town charter, section B.
So I'm back to the charter now.
So that reads, the town manager submit all financial articles to the Appropriation Committee in accordance with the budget. At least 14 days prior to the date of the annual town meeting, the Appropriations Committee shall issue recommendations and detailed explanations of all financial articles in an annual Appropriations Committee report.
Yep, there it is.
But he's not giving us the details until 14 days before? Was that the first part?
No, so at least 14 days before the date of the annual town meeting, the Appropriation Committee will issue the report. The town manager will submit all financial articles to the Appropriation Committee in accordance with the budget schedule.
What's the budget schedule say for him?
Budget schedule. So that isn't specifically addressed in the
Right.
charter, but that was issued, it's in the Appropriations Committee report. That memo from the town
I
manager.
guess all I'm saying is if there's anything that, you know, we're supposed to make recommendations on, and we don't have numbers yet.
Right.
It's difficult.
Now, it seems to me the requirement is for the financial articles to be done by Monday as well.
Great.
That's how I'm reading this. And I think we're doing many of them.
Yeah.
And I think we have the numbers for the budget. And as, to your point, unless somebody is gonna suggest that the budget number changed to solve the OPEB problem, or, and you think that, then the number is known, and the other changes you have asked us to make to the appropriations report don't affect that number.
I mean, I would rather meet on Wednesday and wait. I would rather not approve until, either we're gonna speak to the Board of Selectmen or we're not. I know we want to, so there, I think it needs to be on a meeting on Wednesday. Then we'll approve it or make a decision on Wednesday.
I think that's the committee's, you're in charge of your committee, and you can, we're not telling the committee what to do in any way, so.
Should we also post a meeting for Tuesday night, just in case more than 2 people show up to the Board of Selectmen meeting,
Fine.
just as a safety?
Can do that.
So that means we're not going to meet on Monday then?
We are.
We're going to meet both days.
Well,
Can we approve it on Monday and say, you know, if pending no changes?
So up until town meeting, the approval is not binding. There could be another vote if you so choose.
So the requirement is to produce the report, and the report has language in it that suggests, that expresses your sense, but it is not a vote. Is that correct?
Correct.
It is not a vote on an article. It is a, so you could be that board that issues a report saying you like it, and then vote against it later. It could happen, I think. It would be not improper.
We were for it before we were against it. How's it ring?
I mean, I still think we have to go, we have a lot of articles. I don't know, are the motions gonna be ready on most of the articles? Because that's gonna take a while. We have-
Sure, so
we have
so
quite a few.
the motions are ready now for the majority of the articles. I would just caution that council has not finalized, he's not reviewed all the motions so tonight.
Okay, so we wanna skip Monday and then just do Wednesday?
I think that sounds a good idea.
Okay.
Okay.
I would say it's probably more important to have the vote you want in the sequence you want. That's probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep trying to go through the ones that aren't tied to that specific number?
I think it's just the one. We can still do, can we do,
Revolving
Article
funds, do you have any concerns about that, Article
Have you
11?
seen
are the
them?
numbers?
Yeah, so in the, there's another sheet that I sent out, that has title Article 2 FY19 Supplemental Appropriations and Transfers. Those are drafts of the motions. On page 3 of that is a listing of the proposed spending limits for the revolving fund. There are no changes from last year other than the library, who asked for $1,000 more.
It went from 9,000 to 10,000?
Correct.
Are you talking about this document?
So we're ready for a vote on Article 11?
Yes.
Did everyone see the numbers on the other supplemental handout?
Just one
Why are there multiple lines for DPW?
So page 4.
Is it just from multiple revolving funds?
Okay, thanks.
Tim?
Sorry?
Why does DPW have multiple lines? Do they have multiple revolving funds that they draw from?
I'm gonna guess it's
Highway, water, sewer?
So, Ben, we're on the unnumbered page 4.
Correct.
And there's 3 successive lines for DPW. Do you have it back up
8,000,
for that?
15,000, and 8,000.
Is this yours?
That, I would have to look back on. I can say it was consistent with prior year, but for a specific explanation, I can certainly get back to the committee.
Dave, do you have any idea what those funds are?
I don't, it's been quite a while since
Right.
I've seen them.
Check last year's.
Huh. I'm looking at last year's and it said the same thing.
Oh. The motions document?
Yeah.
And we don't anticipate these numbers will change.
I'm sorry.
We don't anticipate these numbers will change.
Correct.
We made all sorts of changes to these last year.
Well, nobody commented on last year, so. It probably is the different
Departments.
parts of the DPW.
Different, limits.
Ready for a vote?
Could we wait until we know what they are?
Yes. The committee could choose to wait.
Okay.
Just make me feel better.
What is last year's report that we can put out with, Pam probably documented it.
We had the changes in them. I don't see us actually listing them out, but let me.
All right, the next one,
So, excuse me, the next one would be the Chapter 90 funds. Oh, excuse me, the PEG Access Enterprise Fund. This would be the vote to accept the Chapter 44, Section 53, F and a half of the MGL to establish a PEG Access Enterprise Fund for cable television public access, beginning in 2019.
Where would the money come from? For this?
I've seen checks come in for small surcharges on cable use, and,
So, yeah, it has to do with the negotiated cable company. They negotiate as part of their contract, they're obligated to pull back some funds into the town
Okay,
for use, like for this particular thing that we're doing here. They usually pay for a teacher at high schools for audio visual presentations and things like that for people that want to go into this business of broadcasting and things like that. So the money comes from that source.
okay, ready for a vote on Article 12?
13.
12, this 12, the PEG Enterprise Fund. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
So Article 13 is to accept the state aid for Chapter 90 highway funds. The amount this year is $643,095. It's consistent with prior year. I think it was maybe a hair under 640,000.
I'm sorry, is that coming from the state, or is that,
That's coming from the state, correct? There's approximately 500,000 or 550,000 in the operating budget to supplement these funds to get to the recommended highway maintenance program.
Okay, ready for a vote? Article 13, all those in favor, Chapter 90 Highway Fund, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, the motion carries.
The next is for the transfer from the free cash to fund the general stabilization fund in the amount of $208,000.
208,000?
208.
Oh, torn now.
Okay, Article 14, ready for a vote? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, the motion carries.
The next item is pending some language from legal counsel. It has to do with a host community agreement that Todd alluded to earlier. So I'd recommend that we skip that item. following that is a transfer to OPEB. What's in the budget now is $400,000, and then I would just add that what this article is doing is recommending that money be moved to OPEB. The motion will outline the amount of money. So all this does is, in the Appropriations Committee will bring forward that motion. So all this article does is approve a transfer to OPEB.
So if they may potentially change that amount, we could do that in a separate motion while still approving this.
Correct. You would not need to vote again on this article. You could change the motion if there's agreement with the Board of Selectmen.
I'd recommend we wait to vote on this till we see the final number.
I think Ben's saying that we don't have to wait because we could change.
I'd still recommend that we wait.
And Todd, it says to see if so if we don't vote it, how will they see it from our commentary? That's what it is?
Well, we're getting together again to vote on some of these next Wednesday, so we can
Wait for that.
make the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen and see their reaction.
I agree, just based on the principle.
Exactly.
So the next article is the pay-as-you-go capital expenses. And the only change from what's been shared earlier is the senior center cameras that I mentioned have been rolled into the omnibus budget based on some feedback we received from the CIC. And those cameras will be mainly focused on the exterior of the building.
And those were rolled into the operational budget when?
We got the direction from the town manager late last week. So the roll-up happened earlier this week.
Which was after the 30,000 was already pulled out of Hopkinton Day.
It was afterward, yes.
So we still found another 10,000 over there for cameras. Okay, just
So the funding source,
keeping track here.
the funding source remains free cash. That's why I made that full disclosure earlier.
You're getting to a full-time teacher.
So where were they before? They were in the app budget and now they're in the pay-go?
They were in the pay-go and now they're in the operating, so they were stricken from
So-
the most updated.
Okay, so this is part of that free cash that's being applied to the operating budget?
Affirmative, yes.
Okay,
And Ben, to clear.
But for an item that was in the pay-go
yeah.
before.
I got it.
Ivan, quick question. So the earlier recommendation was from the inspectors, right? For the security cameras?
So the initial recommendation was with the IT department and the PD. There's a
Yeah, I think the police department.
the certified crime prevention person. So there was some thought that perhaps the recommendation was, not sure you use the right word, but more than what was necessary, that there was a camera that was facing the copier. So there was some rethought with the PD about making the best uses of the camera available, and the real goal is to protect the seniors. So that's where there's a thought to make sure that this feed goes directly to the dispatch and then to focus on the exterior of the building to help with the vandalism, or if somewhere were to fall, that could be captured.
So I see. So the same inspectors now revisited the recommendation and thought it's not as critical as they thought.
Correct. It's all done in consultation with the folks at the police department.
Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay, we ready for a vote on Article 17?
Thank you.
All those in favor of Article 17 say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
So the next item is a valve maintenance trailer system for $65,000 that will be paid through the Water Enterprise Retained Earnings Fund.
Can you let us know, of the next several, which ones are coming from either water or sewer?
Certainly. So Article 18 is coming from water, Article 19 is coming from water, and Article 22 is coming from sewer. 18 and 19 will be from retained earnings, 22 will be coming from borrowing.
Okay, so 20 and 21 are just direct DPW purchases?
Highway is part of the general government, correct?
Thank you.
All right, ready for a vote on Article 18? All those in favor of Article 18, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
So as I mentioned, next will be paid for through the Water Fund Enterprises retained earnings for $50,000 to be the replacement of an existing truck.
All those in favor of Article 19, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, the motion carries.
The next is for a proposed purchase of a bucket truck for the Highway Division. I'd like to reiterate here that we received some guidance from the Board of Selectmen to purchase a used vehicle. So that's what we will be doing if it's so approved.
Do we have the DPW materials on the shared drive?
Not all of them. So there's the memo that Mr. Westling shared, but I can certainly share any information you'd like as well with the committee.
Where's his narrative? Just wondering what it's replacing.
So this is a new piece
how
of
old?
equipment?
Oh, new piece?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a new item that they don't have,
Correct.
that we're planning to buy a used one, and we dropped the price from a more expensive new model. They felt they could buy a used one. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And
Okay.
we had testimony on this. I don't know if you might have been out that night.
I think it was here, but that's why I was looking for the materials, though, to refresh my memory.
Right.
And then, I'm sorry to kind of jump around, but can you give us some background on 21 as well? Just so
Sure.
we can kind of look at them together.
So the multi-purpose municipal tractor will be to maintain the sidewalks around town, to clear the sidewalks. Currently, there are two vehicles. So this piece of equipment, the proposed, is $177,000. Right now, there's a bit of a bottleneck with the number of pieces of equipment that are available. So right now, the DPW would have 3 people to work the sidewalks. They only have 2 machines. So the 2 machines, because there are only 2 machines, it may lead to school opening later, or the sidewalks not being cleared. Another piece in terms of the amount, that it's important to keep in mind that the sidewalks are not cleared until after the storm is complete, so that's all of the really hard ice, snow that has been pushed off of the road onto the sidewalk, so it is difficult to push through. So that's part of the aspect of this, the cost of this machine.
So the idea was they could operate 3 simultaneous rigs and be done in 6 hours instead of 9 hours.
Correct.
And
So
also,
if they buy this, they'll actually get to the sidewalks in my neighborhood?
No, they're never gonna do
No?
that. They do the core,
I've never seen
the core
them.
area.
I think if I remember, there was no incremental headcount cost.
If you vote for the overall budget, maybe we can make that, do the sidewalks in your
so,
neighborhood.
but a note is that the sidewalk expansion that we're also improving is one of the reasons they also need to get more of these, to clear those.
We haven't gotten to that article yet.
That's right, because that's in the school district, right? It's in the school
Yeah.
zone.
And in terms of the bucket truck as well, that Eversource will clear some trees, but there are only certain dead or dying trees on certain roads. So this will assist the DPW in overall long-term cost savings by not going out to the private sector. And part of the strategy with buying smaller pieces of equipment is that the trees that are, the trunk is wider than this table, will have to go out to the private sector anyway, because we won't have the expertise to do that job internally. But if it's done internally, we won't have to pay prevailing wage that we do if we were to use the private sector.
All right, ready for a vote? All those in favor of
Bucket truck.
Article 20, the bucket truck, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do we still want to talk about the tractor, or we kind of all know about that now?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I think, Todd, you missed that hearing from
All
Yeah,
those-
I'm all set on that now.
All those ready for a vote on Article 21, the multi-purpose municipal tractor? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
So the next item would be funded through a borrowing through the Sewer Enterprise Fund for an update to the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. And part of this will be to determine the best use and, making sure that services is rendered properly to citizens that may need it.
$170,000 for Article 22, the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan Update. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
So the next item is Phase 2 of the sidewalk master plan. And you can pull up those streets.
I think it's in the motion, West Main Street, Wild Road, Hayden Row, and Wood Street.
$1.8 million, and, yeah, it's all right there.
How much is it?
$1,800,000.
So it's Hayden Row, 383,800 feet from EMC Park to Chestnut Street. West Main Street, 4,200 from Lumber Street to Downey Street. Wood Street, 500 feet from Proctor Street to Walker Street. And Wild Road, 200 feet from House 11 to Briar Cliff Drive. And this will be funded through a borrowing.
Is this a land acquisition?
No.
No, it's the construction.
It's all, is it all new sidewalk or?
It's all new sidewalk, it's correct, and it's for construction.
How much was the total length?
So,
Not in either of these documents, we had it before.
Yeah.
Yes,
I want to say it was 5.2 miles, was that?
Yeah, it's significant, few miles.
That sounds about right, yeah.
8,700 feet, I'm not sure what that translates to.
That's only a mile and a half.
Did this was this an article at town meeting last year?
It didn't make it last year. It was,
There was one 2 years
it
ago.
was tabled.
Yeah,
Oh, we had phase one
Yeah.
many years ago.
yeah.
Ready for a vote?
I'd like to see it in a smaller chunk. I don't see that those are all tied to each other where they all need to be done at the same time. My preference would be to take that in 2 bites at least.
Any other discussion?
How would we do that? Would you, like procedurally tonight? I mean, I think it's reasonable.
Oh, all we can do is, say whether we're recommending this or not. If they wanted to change the ask, I think that they could do that, before town meeting, or somebody could amend it at town meeting. But all we can do is either recommend or not. It's my impression.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
So, do
And
we
if you voted not to recommend, someone would probably expect someone to get up and explain why.
We can, yeah.
So this is the second phase of the 5-year sidewalk plan. Is this a 5-year phase, or between 1 and 2 is a total of a 5-year phase?
I don't know the,
So I can't speak exactly to it, but I would suspect it's a 5-phase process, and the number of years have been spread out.
I think phase 1 was the one that went down Ash Street, right? And I'm not sure where else, but that was the major component.
But they also did, they did a lot of West Main Street. Did they do some of Wood Street? No.
No, I don't think so.
we can get John back in here for Wednesday night.
But I think it was multiple years.
If you're even considering voting against it, you might want to just get John in for Wednesday night, and you can have that discussion with him, unless you just,
And we should probably invite him.
Well, do we want to vote on
Can
it?
I suggest, he did present already. I don't know if I want to waste his time or my time hearing it again. Maybe we vote on it and
Yeah, I think we just vote and
consider the
see what
vote if it
happens.
doesn't pass.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If it doesn't pass, then he'd happily come back in.
Yeah. Let's look at his presentation.
I remember John being here. Was he here one night and didn't get it? He was here the same night as Dave, right?
No, he was
No?
here the same night as CPC.
Okay, I did miss that one. Okay. But he didn't have any materials that he left.
So he did not. I can share with you the capital expenditure request.
Yeah.
Certainly, that details I read almost verbatim from that. There's not a whole lot more information, but we can certainly request additional information.
But there was a whole document, Ben, that you sent out that has to, if you look at the topic, this is what we discussed, is that we do have a massive handout, but it's in the handout that was labeled fields, acreage or something like that, and it has every single capital item, and it has a big description of it.
Correct.
Yeah, I guess, beyond sidewalks are sidewalks. From the listing of where these sidewalks are gonna be, I see them as, they're not reliant on each other, so they could be parsed out. And, we're looking at a year, where the Board of Selectmen is trying to limit the impact on taxpayers to a strict 2.5% of the operational budget. And then we start looking at our debt charts and what's already been approved but not applied and things like that. And when we start talking about, I know we haven't found any definite recommendations, but when we start looking at lines, around the, 4 to 5% mark, we're still over that mark for the next couple of years without approving another $2 million in lending, or borrowing, excuse me. And so I'd prefer to see this come down to a smaller bite this year, and then, maybe do the other half next year. So it's not so much about, okay, exactly which sidewalks are you doing, other than the fact that we don't have to do them all at once.
So in terms of the borrowing, are we even borrowing in this, is it even reflective in this year's budget, or because it's not gonna get done until?
Well, we have that estimate of everything that's in this proposal as showing up as borrowing on a chart. And there's assumptions about the number of years and the interest rate, and that would be the chart on.
So this is reflected in the capital borrowing and.
It's reflected in the capital borrowing for the general fund, that dotted line, that top dotted line. And the table at the very end would maybe tell us.
And I'm thinking kind of policy-wise, have we talked about or decided that the 5-year master plan, are we gonna fully implement it? Or we're gonna reevaluate every request that comes through from that? Do we have any policy direction?
I don't have any, but I would suspect that if this is if it's part of a master plan, the plan has the, what were the priorities, what were all those different things, and also had the timeline of when this needed to be done. So, because you approve the borrowing doesn't mean that the money's going to be needed right away. If the same company, which I would assume would get the work, because it would have to be bid out, kind of thing. I don't think that they can be in multiple places, although maybe they could, and they could work, they have enough crews to be able to do that. So the work would be spaced out, so the borrowing would be spaced out. That's something we'd have to get an answer on. What's the schedule of work that's proposed as part of the plan, so that we could best anticipate when we needed to have money on hand. So the borrowing could go forward. It doesn't mean that, because we have one of the lines on the chart that both Ben and Tim presented, was that line where we have money that's been approved, authorized, but we haven't borrowed it yet.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me throw in a little factoid. So the third line on that chart shows what's in this budget, and the amount for 21 that we would foresee for debt associated with the $4.5 million in capital spending of which the 1.8 is probably 40%, is 593,000. So roughly half of that, about 300,000, would reasonably be tied to the sidewalk project in 2021. If we do
Yeah.
$1.8 million, roughly 300,000. I mean,
But- and I look at-
again, we're averaging averages
Yeah,
again, but
right.
that's roughly what it looks like.
And looking at that chart, you know, to the chair's point
In
earlier.
21, with nothing in 20, but 300,000 in 2021.
And the town being at around 9% for the debt that we're carrying. You know, and again, I know that, you know, we kind of throw numbers around between 4 and 5% as a possible target. You know, with that line trajectory and nothing else being passed in the next 5 years anyway, we don't get down to 5% until it looks like, you know, somewhere between 25 and 30.
Well, and if you have a school, you're not gonna see 5% for a while.
Right, right. And this, you know, I mean, even this not making 5%, now it's gonna be, you know, that much higher.
Every layer, every year, you're absolutely right. It's, that 5%, if there's gonna be new schools and more building, that's gonna be a hard, long number to get to, if that's your number.
Right.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's a bit confusing that we do a master plan and then we are hesitant in executing it. So that means the plan is flawed, or we don't have our heart in it.
Well, you need to, yeah, but do you know where the master plan came from?
Not all of it, but you probably have a lot more, I'm sure.
I mean, to my recollection, and this, I could be wrong, but there was no, you know, separate committee formed or anything like that. You know, this was more of, you know, what are our sidewalk needs, and, well, I'm not gonna speak, I don't.
The planning board did a
It's not as
sidewalk survey. The planning board did a sidewalk survey.
Was it the
That's
sidewalk survey?
Yeah,
So
they've
planning,
identified.
planning is often unconstrained aspirational statements. And what planning really needs to be is to consider the reality of constraints. So maybe that's the discussion you're.
So Todd, basically, I was thinking the way you were until John Westerling came in to talk about it, and the item, you know, especially the two things that I'm kind of in favor of this now, is that one, it's the most popular, the sidewalks are the most popular aspect from the citizens in Hopkinton that's top on the list. And two, I asked this question to him, but not the paving or the sidewalk it's not equal, the cost isn't equal. And probably the most expensive piece is really getting from, I don't know, is it from Elm Street to Price Chopper, because you have to go under 495. And I think that's probably the most dangerous area where we really need the sidewalk of all the areas. But I also think it's the most expensive segment of it too, to produce. But I think it is needed, because I drive by it every day, and I see people on bicycles trying to make their way through it, and people trying to walk in the grass or whatever on the side, or in the snow. And that, to me, that it's actually the highest, because you have the apartments there now, that people actually, they do walk to shopping center. But anyway,
The only part of the bike ride that's really bad is when you're going across the on-ramp or the off-ramp. And that's not gonna change.
It gets them off the road though if they're walking.
But there might be signs for them to, you know, there'll be a cut for them to do it. Anyway, that was because John was here and he did
Yeah.
explain it, and that,
Well, maybe we can push this to Wednesday, and I'll have a conversation with John to see if he can change my mind. But-
okay. So we'll move on.
So the next item is the school bus parking lot for $300,000, which we funded through a borrowing. You may recall that this is a supplement to an article that was passed last year, $400,000 to bring the total to $700,000. The adjustment is largely related to approval that went through the Conservation Commission around water runoff, and I think they can speak more to that, but it was largely around wetland replacement, water runoff, stormwater management.
And I know we asked, this now becomes a $700,000 project, what the ROI was on that, because we were supposed to be saving money by bringing the buses here. I'm not assuming, but you can answer that. I know I asked the school committee that, but they had an idea of how much we would make on excise taxes because the buses are held here and.
I think it came out to around what was it, a 4-year or 5-year ROI?
Yeah.
But now it's, I think, 7-year, I think it's 100,000 a year.
So I think, I want to say 7-year, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think it's like 50 in excise and then the contract, because now the buses are closer, makes it, it's another 50,000 savings, somewhere along that line.
100,000 a year, okay.
Are we ready for a vote? All those in favor of Article 24, school bus parking lot, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, carries.
Next item is the purchase of a $1.2 million ladder truck to replace ladder 1, which we funded through a borrowing. And I think one thing that the chief didn't mention yesterday, and it kind of goes along with the sidewalk plan, that there is a decent amount of lead time for delivery of this piece of equipment. It's highly specialized for the town on order. So that would delay the borrowing a bit, and it's also, I think, important to consider when we think about the state of ladder 1, where chief has talked about that 5 years when initially borrowed, that when it's approved, there will still be a bit of a lead time to actually getting the piece of equipment.
And this is the one that they renovated. They bought one used. a couple
Correct,
years ago.
for,
Now it's kind of getting,
Yeah, 1999 for 150,000.
Yeah.
Correct.
Any discussion? All those ready for a vote? Purchase of a ladder truck. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, the motion carries.
So the next item is a public safety software upgrade. So this is the replacement of the existing public safety incident and record management system. It includes all associated conversion costs. We were recently made aware that the company that we currently use is sunsetting this platform because they're moving into other business areas that I suspect that they believe are more profitable. So that this is with that proposal.
what's the amount?
$375,000.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Article 26, public safety software upgrade, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
The next item is a $200,000 proposed renovation to the town hall basement. This would include all engineering, bid documents, construction services, and related costs. So this would renovate the existing kitchen, create more meeting space, wiring, HVAC. So it'll be an all-inclusive estimate. And town hall, the town hall basement is really the one area that's not been updated in many, many years, which would also be funded through a borrowing.
Discussion? All those in favor of Article 27, Town Hall Basement Renovation, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstained, just so you know. So,
Okay.
The next item is $200,000 for security cameras at the school. This will be the final phase of the security camera installation. It's been a multi-year project, which will also be funded through a borrowing.
and the amount on that?
$200,000.
Discussion?
Just making sure, this was part of the same inspection that was done for the adult care center?
Correct. It was part of an overall security assessment, which will be connected to the dispatch, with all the other connected.
And they still stuck to it?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Ready for a vote? All those in favor of Article 28, security cameras for the school, say aye. Opposed? 5-0, the motion carries.
The next item is around, it's principally a engineering study around the potential reuse of center school. A amount is to be finalized. So that is something that I can speak with the town manager that could be voted on Wednesday. I would say it's in the vicinity of $60,000. And that's just for the engineering.
Do we know if they've decided on how they use it, or are they using this study to help them to decide?
The study would help them decide an ultimate use.
And if approved, what's the duration of this study, do you know?
I do not, but I can return with that information.
But keep in mind, this is in addition to another loan that we're still paying for the center school replacement study, which
That's why I
was
want to understand the duration.
$600,000 that was allocated in 2013. And we're going to be paying for that through fiscal year 36. Right now, we're paying in the area of $50,000 a year. I'd love to, I'm sure there are big differences, but I'd love to hear the difference between the two studies and, what we're going to be getting out of it.
So did we have any discussion on this did anyone bring this to us?
Did Dave?
Yeah, that was Dave, right?
Was it Dave?
He didn't
March.
bring this particular item, but there was discussion around center school.
Right, I didn't know there was a feasibility study for the renovation.
Thought he mentioned it when he was talking about the infrastructure.
Yeah, we didn't discuss that much.
Yeah, it was kind of,
Study we didn't.
Yeah, he was talking about it needing a new heating system, which I'll also point out that we're still paying for the replacement heating system.
the study came up at one, I mean, it wasn't in depth, but.
It's the second one, yeah. And depending on the duration, by the time it comes out, we may spend another 600,000. End up paying, right?
I mean, I thought we already had estimates on the cost of a renovation for center school. So,
Renovating it as use of the school.
Yeah, I was gonna say for a different use.
That whole feasibility was whether or not they're gonna renovate it.
no. You had this whole committee who did this year-long study, and they came,
Yeah, I don't know if they really got into what the cost of it would be. I've heard a lot of numbers thrown around, some very big numbers.
Right.
But I don't know if there was anything official. I'm assuming that that's what this is supposed to help come up with.
Correct.
If it doesn't, then, I don't know why we would consider this either.
Seems like we haven't seen the current recommendations as clearly, sounds like. Can we get a copy of that?
I'm sorry.
The feasibility study that's been done already?
Oh, certainly.
You mean the reuse study, or the?
We've done one study, right? I don't know the scope of.
So you're not referring to when the schools looking at it, the building committee was looking at it as a renovation. You're referring to how will we reuse it, the committee that recently met and decided on different options for how to use it?
I think he's talking about the first study that Todd
The first
talked about.
study.
The $600,000 one?
$600,000 study.
That's like probably this big, just so you know. It's
Oh,
gonna be huge. It was something that they were doing and looking at all sorts of things.
Right, yeah. I think we're trying to understand that what wasn't covered in that scope and how much value add would be the new study.
Yeah.
so I don't even see, I have I guess I have a March 25th budget. I don't even see it on the capital articles.
So this is an item that was recently added by the town manager, so we can certainly get more information to bring it forward.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hold off.
Yeah,
So Rebecca, so this study that we're already paying for, was that the whole thing just related to what are the different options for replacing center school?
Yep.
It wasn't about what happens, wasn't any recommendations or what could happen with the building in the future?
The one that the schools did, was whether or not they would renovate it for use. in the
Right,
school.
so that was, okay, we could do this, or we could build another
could
one
build
here.
another one, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
no, I would like whatever department to come before the committee to talk about it before I vote, or get more information.
I think that's good, yeah.
Yep.
So the next item is the community preservation funds for the anticipated collections beginning July 1, 2019. So that would be, per state law, 10% to each of the active / passive recreation, historical resources reserve, community housing resource reserve, open space reserve of $115,799 each, and then the remainder of $694,794 to the budget reserve undesignated.
I know that there's nothing official, but I had heard somebody talking about the reimbursement level this year plummeting down to about 3%. Is that something that you guys have heard at all? Or?
The published rate right now, that is published from the Department of Revenue is 11.57%.
Okay.
Okay, they haven't changed. I keep track of it. I get bulletins. So as far as I know, they haven't changed that yet, based upon, it still has to, they're still working on the budget.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we haven't heard anything.
Okay.
There is a proposed change to the rates that the funds are driven from or populated by, but I haven't heard whether that's passed or not.
Ready for a vote? All those in favor of Article 30, Community Preservation Fund, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, the motion carries.
So the final item for recommendation by the Appropriation Committee is Article 31, the Community Preservation Recommendations. The outlines $20,000 for historical preservation of land records, $3,750 for historical preservation of digitizing photographs, $10,000 for the historical preservation of the most at-risk headstones at Mount Auburn, East Hopkinton, Hayden Row, Bear Hill, and Evergreen cemeteries, $150,000 for the design and construction of a dog park contingent on a $250,000 grant from the Stanton Foundation, $25,000 for the design and installation of a lacrosse wall, $25,000 for the design and installation of an irrigation system at Pine Field, $50,000 for the design of a wetland crossing at 0 Wilson Street to allow access to other recreational lands, and $260,000 for the existing and for the replacement of all existing playground equipment at EMC Park Playground.
When they say playground equipment, is that swings and slides, or is that?
It includes the ground cover, that rubberized ground cover, and the swings and slides.
Nothing to do with the baseball fields or anything like that?
Correct.
Ready for a vote? All those in favor of Article 31, Community Preservation Recommendation, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
So those are the recommendations that the committee will bring forward at town meeting. There will also be the motions which you can review. As I said, we reviewed 27 articles that you were going to provide a recommendation on, or excuse me, you reviewed 30 that you would provide a recommendation on. 27, the Appropriation Committee will bring forward the motion. Those are outlined in the other document I provided that is being reviewed by council and can be reviewed or can be finalized in the future.
Okay, so we'll cancel Monday and we'll schedule Wednesday, and we know the 5 things you want us to do.
All right.
Before can we see the final copy of the AC report?
What you're looking at is the copy. That what we all were just on is what we're working from.
Right, so if we're going to need to approve it on Wednesday, it would
Right.
be nice to see it at least by Tuesday day, so that we
Sure,
can take a look
we'll try
at
to
it.
get the changes in, and so you can see that Tuesday close of business.
Yep, okay.
That works.
So there was a question about the DPW revolving funds.
Yeah.
So one is for highway street openings. The other one is for waste collection for trash bags, sale of those things, and the other one's for recycling.
These are new items, or?
Say it again?
These are new items or pending?
No, those are the revolving
Fund
funds.
setting of the spending levels. So revolving funds is dollar in, dollar out, so it's just, they can spend up to that level before they have to go to the board of selectmen for approval to spend more. Okay?
All right, do I hear a
Okay,
motion?
thank you, good, a very productive meeting, we are really close, I think, to producing the report you want to produce.
Thank you.
For bearing with us.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion to adjourn.
All right, all in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.